The Virgin of the World. By Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus. Chapter 1. Having thus spoken, Isis first pours out for Horos the sweet draught of immortality which souls receive from the gods, and thus begins the most holy discourse. Heaven, crowned with stars, is placed above universal nature, my son Horos, and nothing is wanting to it of that which constitutes the whole world. It is necessary, then, that all nature should be adorned and completed by that which is above her, for this order could not proceed from below to above. The supremacy of the greater mysteries over the lesser is imperative. Celestial order reigns over terrestrial order, as being absolutely determined, and inaccessible to the idea of death. Wherefore, the things below lament, being filled with fear before the marvelous beauty and eternal permanence of the heavenly world. For, indeed, a spectacle worthy of contemplation and desire were these magnificences of heaven, revelations of the God as yet unknown. And this sumptuous majesty of night illumined with a penetrating radiance, albeit less than that of the sun, and all these other mysteries which move above in harmonious cadence, ruling and maintaining the things below by secret influences. And so long as the universal architect refrained from putting an end to this incessant fear, to these anxious investigations, ignorance enveloped the universe. But when he judged good to reveal himself to the world, he breathed into the gods the enthusiasm of love, and poured into their mind the splendor which his bosom contained, that they might first be inspired with the will to seek, next with the desire to find, and lastly with the power to readjust. Now, my wondrous child Horos, all this could not happen among mortals, for as yet they did not exist, but it took place in the universal soul in sympathy with the mysteries of heaven. This was Hermes, the cosmic thought. He beheld the universe of things, and having seen, he understood, and having understood, he had the power to manifest and to reveal. That which he thought, he wrote, that which he wrote, he in great part concealed, wisely silent. And speaking by turns, so that while the world should last, these things might be sought. And thus, having enjoined upon the gods, his brethren, that they should follow in his train, he ascended to the stars. But he had for successor his son, and the heir of his knowledges, Tat, and a little later, Asclepios, son of Emouth, by the counsels of Pan and Hephaestos. One and all those for whom sovereign providence reserved an exact knowledge of heavenly things. Hermes then justified himself in the presence of those who surrounded him, in that he had not delivered the integral theory to his son, on account of his youth. But I, having arisen, beheld with mine eyes, which see the invisible secrets of the beginnings of things, too and at length, but with certainty. I understood that the sacred symbols of the cosmic elements were hidden near the secrets of Osiris. Hermes returned to heaven, having pronounced an invocatory speech. It is not fitting, O my son, that this recital be left incomplete. Thou must be informed of the words of Hermes when he laid down his books. O sacred books, he said, of the immortals, ye in whose pages my hand has recorded the remedies by which incorruptibility is conferred, remain forever beyond the reach of destruction and of decay. Invisible and concealed from all who frequent these regions, until the day shall come in which the ancient heaven shall bring forth instruments worthy of you, whom the Creator shall call souls. Having pronounced upon his books this invocation, he wrapped them in their coverings, returned into the sphere which belonged to him, and all remained hidden for a sufficient space. And nature, O my son, was barren until the hour in which those who are ordained to survey the heavens, advancing towards God, the King of all things, deplored the general inertia, and affirmed the necessity of setting forth the universe. No other than himself could accomplish this work. We pray thee, said they, to consider that which already is, and that which is necessary for the future. At these words, the god smiled benignant, and commanded nature to exist. And, issuing with his voice, the feminine came forth in her perfect beauty. The gods with amaze beheld this marvel. And the great ancestor, pouring out for nature an elixir, commanded her to be fruitful. And forthwith, penetrating the universe with his glance, he cried, "Let heaven be the plenitude of all things, and of the air, and of the ether." God spake, and it was done. But nature, communing with herself, understood that she might not transgress the commandment of the Father, and, uniting herself to labor, she produced a most beautiful daughter, whom she called Invention, and to whom God accorded being. And having differentiated created forms, he filled them with mysteries, and gave the command of them to Invention. Then, not willing that the upper world should be inactive, he saw fit to fill it with spirits, in order that no region should remain in immobility and inertia. And in the accomplishment of his work he used his sacred art. For, taking of himself such essence as was necessary, and mingling with it an intellectual flame, he combined with these other materials by unknown ways. And having achieved by secret formulas the union of these principles, he endowed with motion the universal combination. Gradually, in the midst of the protoplasm, glittered a substance more subtle, purer, more limpid, than the elements from which it was generated. It was transparent, and the artist alone perceived it. Soon, it attained its perfection, being neither melted by the fire, nor chilled by the breath, but possessing the stability of a special combination, and having its proper type and constitution. He bestowed on it a happy name, and, according to the similitude of its energies, he called it self-consciousness. Of this product he formed myriads of souls, employing the choicest part of the mixture for the end which he had in view, proceeding with order and measure, according to his knowledge and his reason. The souls were not necessarily different, but the choicest part, animated by the divine motion, was not identical with the rest. The first layer was superior to the second, more perfect and pure; the second, inferior truly to the first, was superior to the third, and thus, until 60 degrees, was completed the total number. Only, God established this law, that all equally should be eternal, being of one essence, whose forms he alone determines. He traced the limits of their sojourn on the heights of nature, so that they might turn the wheel according to the laws of order and of wise discretion, for the joy of their Father. Then, having summoned to these splendid regions of ether the souls of every grade, he said to them, "O souls, beautiful children of my breath and of my care, you whom I have produced with my hands, in order to consecrate you to my universe, hear my words as a law. Quit not the place assigned to you by my will. The abode which awaits you is heaven, with its galaxy of stars and its thrones of virtue. If you attempt any transgression against my decree, I swear by my sacred breath, by that elixir of which I formed you, and by my creative hands, that I will speedily forge for you chains and cast you into punishment." Having thus spoken, God, my master, mingled together the rest of the congenial elements, earth and water. And pronouncing certain powerful and mystic words, albeit different from the first, he breathed into the liquid protoplasm motion and life, rendered it thicker and more plastic, and formed of it living beings of human shape. That which remained he gave to the loftiest souls inhabiting the region of the gods in the neighborhood of the stars, who are called the sacred genii. "Work," said he, "my children, offspring of my nature, take the residue of my task, and let each one of you make beings in his image. I will give you models." Therewith he took the zodiac and ordained the world in conformity with vital movements, placing the animal signs after those of human form. And after having given forth the creative forces and generative breath for the whole range of beings yet to come, he withdrew, promising to unite to every visible work an invisible breath and a reproductive principle, so that each being might engender it similar without necessity to create continually new entities. And what did the souls do, O my mother? And Isis answered, they took the mingled material, O my son Horos, and began to reflect thereon, and to adore this combination, the work of the Father. Next, they sought to discover of what it was composed, which, indeed, it was not easy to find. Then, fearing that this search might excite the anger of the Father, they set themselves to carry out his commands. Therefore, taking the upper portion of the protoplasm, that which was lightest, they created of it the race of birds. The compound having now become more compact and assuming a denser consistency, they formed of it the quadrupeds. While of the thickest part which needed a moist vehicle for its support, they made fishes. The remainder, being cold and heavy, was employed by the souls in the creation of reptiles. Forthwith, O my son, proud of their work, they were not afraid to transgress the divine law, and, in spite of the prohibition, they receded from their appointed limits. Not willing to remain longer in the same abode, they moved ceaselessly, and repose seemed to them death. But, O my son, thus Hermes informed me, their conduct could not escape the eye of the Lord God of all things. He minded to punish them, and to prepare for them hard bonds. The ruler and master of the universe resolved then for the penance of the souls, to mold the human organism, and having called me to him, said Hermes, he spoke in this wise. O soul of my soul, holy thought of my thought, how long shall earthly nature remain sad? How long shall the creation already produced continue inactive and without praise? Bring hither before me all the gods of heaven. Thus God spake, quoth Hermes, and all obeyed his decree. Look upon the earth, he said to them, and upon all things beneath. Straightway they looked, and understood the will of the Lord. And when he spoke to them of the creation of man, asking of each what he could bestow upon the race about to be born, the sun first replied, I will illumine mankind. Then the moon promised enlightenment in her turn, adding that already she had created fear, silence, sleep, and memory. Kronos announced that he had begotten justice and necessity. Zeus said, in order to spare the future race perpetual wars, I have generated fortune, hope, and peace. Ares declared himself already father of conflict, impetuous zeal, and emulation. Aphrodite did not wait to be called upon. As for me, O master, she said, I will bestow upon mankind desire, with voluptuous joy and laughter, that the penalty to which our sister souls are destined may not weigh on them too hardly. These words of Aphrodite, O my son, were welcomed gladly. And I, said Hermes, will endow human nature with wisdom, temperance, persuasion, and truth, nor will I cease to ally myself with invention. I will ever protect the mortal life of such men as are born under my signs, seeing that to me the Creator and Father has attributed in the zodiac, signs of knowledge and intelligence. Above all, when the movement which draws thereto the stars is in harmony with the physical forces of each. He who is master of the world rejoiced at hearing these things, and decreed the production of the human race. As for me, said Hermes, I sought what material ought to be employed in the work, and invoked the Lord. He commanded the souls to give up the residue of the protoplastic substance, which having taken, I found it entirely dried up. Therefore, I used a great excess of water wherewith to renew the combination of the substance, in such wise that the product might be resolvable, yielding, and feeble. And that force should not be added therein to intelligence. When I had achieved my work it was beautiful, and I rejoiced in seeing it. And from below I called upon the Lord to behold what I had done. He saw it, and approved. Straightway he ordained that the souls should be incorporated, and they were seized with horror on learning what should be their condemnation. These words, said Isis, struck me. Hearken, my son Horos, for I teach thee a mystery. Our ancestor Chemephes had it also from Hermes, who inscribes the recital of all things. He, in turn, received it from the ancient Chemephes when he admitted me to the initiation of the black veil. Too and thou, likewise, O marvelous and illustrious child, receive it from me. The souls were about to be imprisoned in bodies, whereat some sighed and lamented, as when some wild and free animal suddenly enchained. In the first moment of subjection to hard servitude and of severance from the beloved habits of the wilderness, struggles and revolts, refusing to follow its conqueror. And if occasion presents itself, slaying him. Others, again, hissed like serpents, or gave vent to piercing cries and sorrowful words, glancing aimlessly from height to depth. Great heaven, said one, principle of our birth, ether, pure airs, hands, and sacred breath of the sovereign God, and you, shining stars, eyes of the gods, unwearying light of sun and moon. Our early brethren, what grief, what rending is this? Must we quit these vast, effulgent spaces, this sacred sphere, all these splendors of the empyrean and of the happy republic of the gods, to be precipitated into these vile and miserable abodes? What crime, O wretched ones, have we committed? How can we have merited, poor sinners that we are, the penalties which await us? Behold the sad future in store for us, to minister to the wants of a fluctuating and dissoluble body. No more may our eyes distinguish the souls divine. Hardly through these watery spheres shall we perceive, with sighs, our ancestral heaven, at intervals even we shall cease altogether to behold it. By this disastrous sentence direct vision is denied to us, we can see only by the aid of the outer light, these are but windows that we possess, not eyes. Nor will our pain be less when we hear in the air the fraternal breathing of the winds with which no longer can we mingle our own, since that will have for its dwelling, instead of the sublime and open world, the narrow prison of the breast. But thou, who drivest us forth, and causest us from so high a seat to descend so low, assign a limit to our sufferings. O Master and Father, so quickly become indifferent to thy handiwork, appoint a term to our penance, deign to bestow on us some last words, while yet we are able to behold the expanse of the luminous spheres. This prayer of the souls was granted, my son Horos, for the Lord was present, and sitting upon the throne of truth, thus he addressed them. O souls, you shall be governed by desire and necessity, after me, these shall be your masters and your guides. Souls, subjected to my scepter which never fails, know that inasmuch as you remain stainless you shall inhabit the regions of the skies. If among you any be found to merit reproach, they shall inhabit abodes destined to them in mortal organisms. If your faults be light, you shall, delivered from the bond of the flesh, return to heaven. But if you become guilty of graver crime, if you turn away from the end for which you have been formed, then indeed you shall dwell neither in heaven nor in human bodies. But thenceforth you shall pass into those of animals without reason. Having thus spoken, O my son Horos, he breathed upon them and said, It is not according to chance that I have ordained your destiny. If you act ill, it will be worse. It will be better if your actions are worthy of your birth. It is myself and not another who will be your witness and your judge. Understand that it is because of your past errors that you are to be punished and shut up in fleshly bodies. In different bodies, as I have already told you, your rebirths will be different. Dissolution shall be a benefit, restoring your former happy condition. But if your conduct be unworthy of me, your prudence, becoming blinded and guiding you backwards, will cause you to take for good fortune that which is really a chastisement, and to dread a happier lot as though it were a cruel injury. The most just among you shall, in their future transformations, approximate to the divine, becoming among men, upright kings, true philosophers, leaders and legislators, true seers, collectors of salutary plants, cunning musicians, intelligent astronomers, wise augurs, instructed ministrants, all beautiful and good offices. As among birds are the eagles which pursue not nor devour those of their own kind, and do not permit weaker ones to be attacked in their presence, because justice is in the nature of the eagle. Among quadrupeds, the lion, for he is a strong animal, untamed by slumber, in a mortal body performing immortal toils, and by nothing tired nor beguiled. Among reptiles, the dragon, because he is powerful, living long, innocent, and a friend of men, allowing himself to be tamed, having no venom, and, leaving old age, approximating to the nature of the gods. Among fishes, the dolphin, for this creature, taking pity on those who fall into the sea, will carry them to land if they still live, and will abstain from devouring them if dead. Although it is the most voracious of all aquatic animals. Having spoken these words, God became an incorruptible intelligence. After these things, my son Horos, there arose out of the earth an exceeding powerful spirit, unencumbered with any corporeal envelope, strong in wisdom, but savage and fearful. Although he could not be ignorant of the knowledge he sought, seeing the type of the human body to be beautiful and august of aspect, and perceiving that the souls were about to enter into their envelopes. "What are these?" said he, "O Hermes, secretary of the gods?" "These are men," replied Hermes. "It is a rash work," said he, "to make man with such penetrating eyes, such a subtle tongue, such a delicate hearing that can hear even those things which concern him not, such a fine scent, and in his hands a sense of touch capable of appropriating everything. O generating spirit, thinkest thou it is well that he should be free from care, this future investigator of the fine mysteries of nature? Wilt thou leave him exempt from suffering, he whose thought will search out the limits of the earth? Mankind will dig up the roots of plants, they will study the properties of natural juices, they will observe the nature of stones, they will dissect not only animals but themselves, desiring to know how they have been formed. They will stretch forth their daring hands over the sea, and, cutting down the timber of the wild forest, they will pass from shore to shore seeking one another. They will pursue the inmost secrets of nature even into the heights, and will study the motions of heaven. Nor is this enough, when nothing yet remains to be known than the furthest boundary of the earth, they will seek even there the last extremities of night. If they apprehend no obstacle, if they live exempt from trouble, beyond reach of any fear or of any anxiety, even heaven itself will not arrest their audacity. They will seek to extend their power over the elements. Teach them, then, desire and hope, in such wise that they may know likewise the dread of accident and of difficulty, and the painful sting of expectation deceived. Let the curiosity of their souls have for balance, desire and fear, care and vain hope. Let their souls be a prey to mutual love, to aspirations and varied longings, now satisfied, now deceived, so that even the sweetness of success may be an allurement to draw them towards misfortune. Let the weight of fevers oppress them, and break in them all desire. Thou sufferest, Horos, in hearing this thy mother's recital? Surprise and wonder seize thee in presence of the evils which now fall upon poor humanity? That which thou art about to hear is still more sad. The speech of Momos pleased Hermes, he deemed his advice good, and he followed it. "O, Momos," said he, "the nature of the divine breath which enwraps all things shall not be ineffectual. The Master of the universe has charged me to be his agent and overseer. The deity of the penetrating eye one will observe and direct all events. And for my part, I will design a mysterious instrument, a measure inflexible and inviolable, to which everything shall be subject from birth even to final destruction, and which shall be the bond of created entities. This instrument shall rule that which is on the earth, and all the rest." "It is thus," quoth Hermes, "that I spoke to Momos, and forthwith the instrument operated. Straightway the souls were incorporated, and I was praised for my work. Then the Lord summoned anew the assembly of the gods. They gathered together, and he thus addressed them. Gods, who have received a sovereign and imperishable nature, and the sway of the vast eternity, ye whose office it is to maintain unceasingly the mutual harmony of things. How long shall we govern an empire unknown? How long shall creation remain invisible to the sun and moon? Let each of us undertake his part in the universe. By the exercise of our power let us put an end to the cohesion of inertia. Let chaos become a fable, incredible to posterity. Inaugurate your great labors, I will direct you." He said, and immediately the cosmic unity, until now obscure, was opened, and in the heights appeared the heavens with all their mysteries. The earth, hitherto unstable, grew more solid beneath the brightness of the sun, and stood forth adorned with enfolding riches. All things are beautiful in the eyes of God, even that which to mortals appears uncomely, because all is made according to the divine laws. And God rejoiced in beholding his works filled with movement, and with outstretched hands grasping the treasures of nature. "Take these," he said, "O sacred earth, Take these, O venerable one, who art to be the mother of all things, and henceforth let nothing be lacking to thee." With these words, opening his divine hands, he poured his treasures into the universal font. But yet they were unknown, for the souls newly embodied and unable to support their opprobrium, sought to enter into rivalry with the celestial gods, and, proud of their lofty origin, boasting an equal creation with these, revolted. Thus men became their instruments, opposed to one another, and fomenting civil wars. And thus, for suppressing weakness, the strong burnt and massacred the feeble, and quick and dead were thrust forth from the sacred places. Then the elements resolved to complain before the Lord of the savage condition of mankind. For the evil being already very grievous, the elements hastened to God the Creator, and pleaded in this wise, the fire being suffered to speak first. "O Master," he said, "Maker of this new world, thou whose name, mysterious among the gods, has hitherto been revered among all men. How long, O divinity, halt thou decreed to leave human life without God? Reveal thyself to the world which calls for thee, correct its savage existence by the institution of peace. Grant unto life, law, grant unto night oracles, fill all things with happy auguries, let men fear the judgment of the gods, and no man shall sin any more. Let crimes receive their just punishment, and men will abstain from unrighteousness. They will fear to violate oaths, and madness will have an end. Teach them gratitude for benefits, so shall I devote my flame to pure offerings and libations, and the altars shall yield the exhalations of sweet savors. For now I am polluted, O Master, because the impious temerity of men forces me to consume flesh. They will not suffer me to remain in my nature, they pervert and corrupt my purity. The air spoke in its turn, I am defiled by the effluvium of corpses, O Master, I am becoming pestilent and unwholesome, and from on high I witness things which I ought not to behold. Then the water took up the word, and spoke on this wise, O my illustrious Son, Father and wondrous Creator of all things, Divinity incarnate, Author of nature who brings forth all through thee, command the waters of the streams to be always pure. For now both rivers and seas are compelled to bathe the destroyer and to receive his victims. Then at the last the earth appeared, O my glorious Son, and thus began. O King, Chief of celestial choirs and Lord of their orbits, Master and Father of the elements which lend to all things increase and decrease, and into which all must return. Behold how the impious and insensate tribe of man overspreads me, O Venerable One, since by thy commands I am the habitation of all beings. Bearing them all and receiving into my bosom all that is slain, such is now my reproach. Thy terrestrial world in which all creatures are contained is bereft of God. And because they revere nothing, they transgress every law and overwhelm me with all manner of evil works. To my shame, O Lord, I admit into myself the product of the corruption of carcasses. But I, who receive all things, would fain also receive God. Grant to earth this grace, and if thou commest not thyself, for indeed I cannot contain thee, let me at least receive some holy efflux of thee. Let the earth become the most glorious of all the elements, and since she alone gives all things to all, may she revere herself as the recipient of thy favors. Thus the elements discoursed, and forthwith God filled the universe with his divine voice. Go, said he, sacred offspring, worthy of your Father's greatness, seek not to change anything, nor refuse to my creatures your ministry. I will send you an efflux of myself, a pure being who shall investigate all actions, who shall be the dreadful and incorruptible judge of the living. And sovereign justice shall extend its reign even into the shades beneath the earth. Thus shall every man receive his merited deserts. Thereupon the elements ceased from their complaints, and each of them resumed its functions and its sway. And in what manner, O my mother, said Horos, did the earth afterwards obtain this efflux of God? I will not recount this nativity, said Isis, I dare not, O powerful Horos, declare the origin of thy race, lest men in the future should learn the generation of the gods. I will say only that the supreme God, creator and architect of the world, at length accorded to earth for a season, thy father Osiris and the great goddess Isis, that they might bring the expected salvation. By them life attained its fullness, savage and bloody wars were ended, they consecrated temples to the gods their ancestors, and instituted oblations. They gave to mortals law, nourishment, and raiment. They shall read, Hermes said, my mystic writings, and dividing them into two parts, they shall keep certain of them, and inscribe upon columns and obelisks those which may be useful to man. Institutors of the first tribunals, they established everywhere the reign of order and justice. With them began the faith of treaties, and the introduction into human life of the religious duty of oaths. They taught the rites of sepulture towards those who ceased to live, they interrogated the horrors of death. They shewed that the spirit from without delights to return into the human body, and that if the way of entry be shut against it, it brings about a failure of life. Instructed by Hermes, they engraved upon hidden tables that the air is filled with genii. Instructed by Hermes in the secret laws of God, they alone were the teachers and legislators of mankind, initiating them in the arts, the sciences, and the benefits of civilized life. Instructed by Hermes concerning the sympathetic affinities which the Creator has established between heaven and earth, they instituted religious representations and sacred mysteries. And, considering the corruptible nature of all bodies, they ordained prophetic initiation, so that the prophet who lifts his hands to the gods should be instructed in all things, and that thereby philosophy and magic might provide nourishment for the soul, and medicine might heal the sufferings of the flesh. Having performed all these things, O my son, and seeing the world arrived at its fullness, Osiris and I were recalled by the inhabitants of heaven. But we could not return thither without having first praised the Lord, so that the celestial vision might fill the expanse, and that the way of a happy ascension might open before us. Since God delights in hymns. O my mother, said Horos, teach me this hymn, that I also may be instructed in it. Hearken, my son, answered Isis. Chapter 2. O my illustrious son, if thou wilt know anything further, ask it of me. And Horos said, revered mother, who would fain know how royal souls are born. And Isis answered, herein, my son Horos, lies the distinctive character of royal souls. There are in the universe, 4 regions, governed by a fixed and immutable law, heaven, the ether, the air, and the most holy earth. Above, in heaven, dwell the gods, ruled as are all the rest, by the maker of the universe. In the ether are the stars, governed by the great fire, the sun. In the air are the souls of the genii, governed by the moon. Upon earth are men and other animals governed by the soul who, for the time, is their king. For the gods themselves engender those who shall be kings befitting the terrestrial race. Princes are the issue of kings, and he who is most kingly, is a greater king than the rest. One the sun, nearer to God than is the moon, is greater and stronger than she, and to him she is subject as much by rank as by power. The king is the last of the gods and the first of men. So long as he sojourns upon earth, his divinity is concealed, but he possesses something which distinguishes him from other men and approximates him to God. The soul in him comes from a loftier region than that from which descend the souls of common men. Souls destined to reign upon the earth descend thither for 2 causes. There are those who in former lives have lived blameless, and who merit apotheosis. For such as these royalty is a preparation for the divine state. Again, there are holy souls who, for some slight infringement of the interior and divine law, receive in royalty a penance whereby the suffering and shame of incarnation are mitigated. The condition of these in taking a body resembles not that of others, they are as blessed as when they were free. As to the various characters of these kings, the variety is not in the souls, for all are royal, but it is due to the nature of the angels and genii who assist them. For souls destined to such offices are not without ministers and escort. Heavenly justice, even while exiling them from the abodes of the blessed, treats them as their nature befits. When, then, O my son Horos, the ministering angels and genii appointed are warlike, the soul in their charge takes that character, forgetting its own. Or rather laying it aside until some future change of condition. If the guardian angels are of a gentle order, then the soul follows its path in peace. If they are friends of judgment, the soul loves to judge. If they are musicians, then the soul sings. If they love truth, the soul is that of a philosopher. Thus the souls necessarily follow the teaching of their guardians. Falling into human bodies they forego their proper estate, and while exiled from it they approximate to those intelligences by whom they have been embodied. Thine explanation is complete, my mother, said Horos, but thou hast not yet informed me in what manner noble souls are born. There are upon earth, O my son, different offices. So also is it among souls, they occupy different stations, and that soul which issues from a more exalted sphere is nobler than the rest, even as he who is free among men, is nobler than the slave. Exalted and royal souls are necessarily the masters of men. How are souls born, male or female? Souls, my son Horos, are all equal in nature, since they come from one region wherein the Creator has formed them. There are not among them either males or females. This distinction exists only between bodies, and not between incorporeal beings. But some are more energetic, some are gentler, and this belongs to the air in which all things are formed. For an airy body envelopes the soul, in it are the elements of earth, water, air, and fire. Among females this combination contains more of cold and of moisture than of dryness and heat, and the soul which is enfolded therein is watery and disposed to softness. The contrary happens among males, their envelope contains more of dryness and of heat, less of cold and of moisture, hence in bodies so formed the souls manifest greater vivacity and energy. And how, O my mother, are born the souls of the wise? And Isis answered, the organ of vision is enveloped in tunics. When these tunics are thick and dense, the sight is dull. When they are fine and subtle, the sight is penetrating. Even so is it with the soul, she likewise has her coverings, incorporeal as herself. These coverings are the interior airs. When they are subtle, clear, and transparent, then the soul is perspicuous. When, on the contrary, they are dense, thick, and turgid, then she cannot see far, and discerns only, as though in cloudy weather, that which lies immediately before her steps. And Horos said, for what reason, my mother, are the minds of men who are not of our holy country less open than the minds of those who belong to it? And Isis replied 1. The earth is set in the midst of the universe like a man lying on his back and gazing into heaven, and the various regions of earth correspond to the different members of the man. The earth turns her gaze towards heaven as towards her father, following in her changes the changes of the skies. Her head lies to the south, her right shoulder to the east, her left is turned towards the Libyan wind, her feet are under the constellation of the bear, the right beneath the tail, and the left beneath the head of the bear. Her loins are under the regions of heaven nearest to the bear, the midst of her body is beneath the center of heaven. Behold, as a proof of these things, how they who dwell in the south have a beautiful countenance and plentiful hair, while the Orientals have hands hardy in conflict and ready with the bow. For they are right-handed, the Westerns are strong and fight with the left hand, attributing to the left side the functions which belong in others to the right. Those who dwell beneath the bear are distinguished by the attributes of their feet, and by the beauty of their legs. Those who inhabit beyond the bear in the climate of Italy and of Greece are remarkable for the beauty of their loins, and hence their tendency to prefer males. This part of the body also, being whiter than the rest, produces men of a whiter hue. The hallowed region of our ancestors is in the midst of the earth, and since the midst of the human body is the seat of the heart, and the heart of the soul, this is why, my son, the men of this land, beside the qualities which all men possess in common, have also a loftier intelligence and wisdom, because the heart of the earth brings them forth and nourishes them. Moreover, my son, the south is the storehouse of the clouds, it is there they assemble, and thence, it is said, flows our river, when the cold becomes abundant. Now, where the clouds descend, the air grows thick and is filled with vapors which spread themselves as a veil not only over the sight, but over the intelligence. The east, my son Horos, is continually disturbed and glowing under the sunrise, as is the west under the sunset, therefore, they who dwell in these regions can hardly preserve a clear perception. The north, by means of its icy temperature, thickens the mind even as it does the body. The central land alone, clear and serene, is favored as are those who inhabit her. She brings forth in a perpetual tranquility, she adorns and completes her offspring, she contends alone against all others, she triumphs. And like a worthy ruler partakes with the vanquished the fruits of victory. Explain to me further, my august mother, what it is that causes in living men during long maladies, an alteration of discernment, of reason, even of the soul itself. And Isis answered, among animals there are those who have affinity with fire, others with water, others with earth, others with air, others again with 2 or 3 elements, or with all the 4. Or, inversely, some have an antipathy for fire, some for water, some for earth, some for air, or again for 2, 3, or 4 elements. Thus, the locust and all kinds of insects flee from the fire, the eagle, the hawk, and other birds of flight fear the water, the fish dread the air and earth. The serpent abhors the open air, and like all crawling creatures loves the ground, all fishes delight in the deep, the birds in the air where they pass their lives. Those who fly highest delight in the fire and sojourn in its vicinity. There are even certain creatures who disport themselves in the fire, such are the salamanders who have their abode in it. The elements enfold the body, and every soul inhabiting a body is weighed down and enchained by the 4 elements. Wherefore, it is natural that the soul should have affinity with certain elements and aversion for others, for which reason she cannot enjoy perfect happiness. Nevertheless, as the soul is of divine origin, she struggles and meditates even beneath this bodily covering, but her thoughts are not what they would be if she were free from the body. And if the body be disturbed and troubled by sickness or by terror, the soul herself is tossed about like a man in the midst of tempestuous waves. Chapter 3. Teach, you hast given me admirable instruction, my most powerful mother Isis, concerning the marvelous creation of souls by God, and I am filled with wonder. But thou hast not yet shown me whither souls depart when set free from bodies. Fain would I contemplate this mystery, and thank only thee for the initiation. And Isis said, Hearken, my son, for thy most necessary inquiry holds an important place, and may not be neglected. Hear my reply. O great and marvelous scion of the illustrious Osiris! Think not that souls on quitting the body mix themselves confusedly in the vague immensity and become dispersed in the universal and infinite spirit, without power to return into bodies, to preserve their identity, or to seek again their primeval abode. Water spilt from a vase returns no more to its place therein, it has no proper locality, it mingles itself with the mass of waters, but it is not thus with souls, O most wise Horos. I am initiated into the mysteries of the immortal nature, I walk in the ways of the truth, and I will reveal all to thee without the least omission. And first I will tell thee that water, being a body without reason, composed of myriads of fluid particles, differs from the soul which is, my son, a personal entity. The royal work of the hands and of the mind of God, abiding herself in intelligence. That which proceeds from unity, and not from multiplicity, cannot mingle with other things, and in order that the soul may be joined to the body, God subjects this harmonious union to necessity. Souls do not, then, return confusedly, nor by chance, into one and the same place, but each is dispatched into the condition which belongs to her. And this is determined by that which the soul experiences while yet she is in the tenement of the body, loaded with a burden contrary to her nature. Here, therefore, this comparison, O beloved Horos. Suppose that there should be shut up in the same prison, men, eagles, doves, swans, hawks, swallows, sparrows, flies, serpents, lions, leopards, wolves, dogs, hares, oxen, sheep, and certain amphibious animals, such as seals, hydras, turtles, crocodiles, and that at the same moment all the creatures should be liberated. All at once would escape, the men would seek cities and the public places, the eagles the ether, where nature teaches them to live, the doves the lower air, the hawks the higher expanse. The swallows would repair to places frequented by men, the sparrows to the orchards, the swans to districts where they could sing. The flies would haunt the proximity of the ground as high only as human exhalations extend, for the property of flies is to live on these and to flit over the surface of the earth. The lions and leopards would flee to the mountains, the wolves to the solitudes, the dogs would follow the track of man. The hares would betake themselves to the woods, the oxen to the fields and meadows, the sheep to the pastures, the serpents would seek the caves of the earth. The seals and the turtles would rejoin their kind in the shallows and running waters, in order to enjoy, conformably to their nature, alike the proximity of the shore and of the deep. Each creature would return, conducted by its own interior discernment, into the abode befitting it. Even so every soul, whether human or inhabiting the earth under other conditions, knows whither she ought to go. Unless, indeed, some son of Typhon should pretend that a bull may subsist in the waters or a turtle in the air. If, then, even when immersed in flesh and blood, souls do not infringe the law of order, although under penance, for union with the body is a penance, how much more shall they conform thereto when delivered from their bonds and set at liberty? Now this most holy law, which extends even unto heaven, is on this wise, O illustrious child, behold the hierarchy of souls. The expanse between the empyrean and the moon is occupied by the gods, the stars, and the powers of providence. Between the moon and ourselves, my son, is the abode of the souls. The unmeasured air, which we call the wind, has in itself an appointed way in which it moves to refresh the earth, as I shall by and by relate. But this movement of the air upon itself impedes not the way of the souls, nor does it hinder them from ascending and descending without obstacle. They flow across the air without mingling in it, or confounding themselves therewith, as water flows over oil. This expanse, my son, is divided into 4 provinces, and into 60 regions. The first province from the earth upwards comprehends 4 regions, and extends as far as certain summits or promontories, which it is unable to transcend. The second province comprises 8 regions in which the motions of the winds arise. Be thou attentive, my son, for thou hearest the ineffable mysteries of the earth, the heavens, and of the sacred fluid which lies between. 1 In the province of the winds fly the birds, above this there is no moving air nor any creature. But the air with all the beings it contains distributes itself into all boundaries within its reach, and into the 4 quarters of the earth, while the earth cannot lift itself into the mansions of the air. The third province comprehends 16 regions filled with a pure and subtle element. The fourth contains 32 regions, in which the air, wholly subtle and diaphanous, allows itself to be penetrated by the element of fire. Such is the order which, without confusion, reigns from depth to height. To wit, for general divisions, 12 intervals, 60 regions, and in these dwell the souls, each according to the nature thereof. They are indeed all of one substance, but they constitute a hierarchy, and the further any region is removed from the earth, the loftier is the dignity of the souls which dwell therein. And now it remains to be explained to thee, O most glorious Horos, what souls they are who abide in each of these regions, and this I shall set forth, beginning by the most exalted. The expanse which stretches between earth and heaven is divided into regions, my son Horos, according to measure and harmony. To these regions our ancestors have given various names, some call them zones, others firmaments, others spheres. Therein dwell the souls who are freed from bodies, and those who have not yet been incorporated. The stations which they occupy correspond with their dignity. In the upper region are the divine and royal souls. The baser souls, they who float over the surface of the earth, are in the lowest sphere, and in the middle regions are the souls of ordinary degree. Thus, my son, the souls destined to rule descend from the superior zones, and when they are delivered from the body, thither they return, or even higher still. Unless indeed they have acted contrary to the dignity of their nature and to the laws of God. For, if they have transgressed, the providence on high causes them to descend into the lower regions according to the measure of their faults. And in like manner also it conducts other souls, inferior in power and dignity, from the lower spheres into a more exalted abode. For on high dwell two ministers of the universal providence, one is guardian of the souls, the other is their conductor, who sends them forth and ordains for them bodies. The first minister guards them, the second releases or binds them, according to the will of God. In this wise the law of equity presides over the changes which take place above, even as upon earth also it molds and constructs the vessels in which the souls are immured. This law is supplemented by two energies, memory and experience. Memory directs in nature the preservation and maintenance of all the original types appointed in heaven. The function of experience is to provide every soul descending into generation with a body appropriate thereto, so that passionate souls should have vigorous bodies, slothful souls sluggard bodies. Active souls active bodies, gentle souls gentle bodies, powerful souls powerful bodies, cunning souls dexterous bodies, briefly, that every soul should have a befitting nature. For it is not without just cause that winged creatures are clothed with feathers, that intelligent creatures are gifted with finer senses and superior to others. That beasts of the field are furnished with horns, with tusks, with claws, or other weapons. That reptiles are endowed with undulating and flexible bodies, and lest the moisture of their natures should render them feeble, are armed either with teeth or with pointed scales, so that they are even less than others, in peril of death. As for fishes, these timid souls have allotted to them for a dwelling place that element in which light is bereft of its double activity, for in the water, fire neither illuminates nor burns. Each fish, swimming by the help of his spiny fins, flies where he wills, and his weakness is protected by the obscurity of the deep. Thus are souls immured in bodies resembling themselves, in human shape, those souls who have received reason, in flying creatures, souls of a wild nature. In beasts, souls without reason, whose only law is force, in reptiles, deceitful souls, for they attack not their prey face to face, but by ambush. While fishes enshrine those timid souls who merit not the enjoyment of other elements. In every order of animals there are individuals who transgress the laws of their being. In what way, my mother? Said Horos. And Isis answered, in this wise, a man who acts against reason, a beast which eludes necessity, a reptile which forgets its cunning, a fish which loses its timidity, a bird which renounces freedom. Thou hast heard what was to be said concerning the hierarchy of souls, their descent, and the creation of bodies. O my son, in every order of souls there are found a few royal souls, and of diverse characters. Some fiery, some cold, some proud, some gentle, some crafty, some simple, some contemplative, some active. This diversity belongs to the regions from whence they descend into bodies. From the royal zone the royal souls go forth, but there are many royalties, the royalty of spirit, of the flesh, of art, of science, of the virtues. And how, said Horos, dost thou name these royalties? O my son, the king of souls who have hitherto existed is thy father Osiris, the king of bodies is the prince of each nation, he who governs. The king of wisdom is the father of all things, the initiator is the thrice great Hermes, over medicine presides Asclepios, the son of Hephaestos. Force and power are under the sway of Osiris, and after him, under thine, my son. Philosophy depends on Arnabaskines, poetry, yet again, on Asclepios, Imauthes' son. So that, if thou thinkest thereon, thou wilt perceive that there are indeed many royalties and many kings. But the supreme royalty belongs to the highest region, lesser kingships correspond to the spheres which bring them forth. Those who issue from the fiery zone handle fire, those who come from the watery zone frequent liquid spheres. From the region of art and learning those are born who devote themselves to art and science, from the region of inactivity, those who live in ease and idleness. All that is done and said upon earth has its origin in the heights, from whence all essences are dispensed with measure and equilibrium. Nor is there anything which does not emanate from above and return thither. Explain to me this that thou sayest, O my mother. And Isis answered, an evident token of these exchanges has been stamped on all creatures by most holy nature. The breath which we indraw from the upper air we exhale and again inbreathe by means of the lungs within us which perform this work. And when the way destined to receive our breath is closed, then no longer do we remain on earth, we depart hence. Moreover, O my glorious son, there are other accidents by which the balance of our combination may be destroyed. What is, then, this combination, O my mother? It is the union and admixture of the four elements, whence emanates a vapor which envelopes the soul, penetrates into the body and communicates to both its own character. Thus are produced varieties among souls and bodies. If in the composition of a body, fire dominates, then the soul being already of an ardent nature, receives thereby an excess of heat which renders it the more energetic and furious. And the body the more vivacious and active. If the air dominates, the body and soul of the creature are thereby rendered unstable, errant and restless. The domination of the water causes the soul to be mild, affable, bland, sociable, and easily molded, because water blends and mixes itself readily with all other things. Dissolves them if it be abundant, moistens and penetrates them if it be less in quantity. A body softened by too much humidity offers but a weak resistance, a slight malady disintegrates it, and little by little dissolves its cohesion. Again, if the earthy element be dominant, the soul is obtuse, because the body lacks subtlety, nor can she force a way through the density of its organism. Therefore, the soul remains indrawn upon herself, borne down by the burden she supports, and the body is solid, inactive, and heavy, moving only with effort. But if the elements be all in just equilibrium, then the whole nature is ardent in its actions, subtle in its motions, fluent in its sensations, and of a robust constitution. Of the predominance of air and fire birds are born, whose nature resembles that of the elements which generate them. Men are endowed with an abundance of fire united with but a little air, and of water and earth equal parts. This excess of fire becomes sagacity, seeing that intelligence is indeed a kind of flame, which consumes not, but which penetrates. The predominance of water and earth with a sufficient admixture of air and but little fire engenders beasts. Those endued with more fire than the rest are the more courageous. Water and earth in equal quantities give birth to reptiles, which, being deprived of fire, have neither courage nor truthfulness, while the excess of water renders them cold, that of earth sordid and heavy, and the lack of air makes all their movements difficult. Much water with but little earth produces fishes. The absence of fire and air in them causes their timidity, and disposes them to lie hidden. While the predominance of water and earth in their nature approximates them by natural affinity to earth dissolved in water. Moreover, by means of the proportional increase of the elements composing the body is the body itself increased, and its development ceases when the full measure is attained. And so long, my beloved son, as equilibrium is maintained in the primitive combination and in the vapors arising therefrom, that is, so long as the normal proportion of fire, air, earth, and water remains unchanged, the creature continues in health. But if the elements deviate from the proportion originally determined, I speak not now of the growth of activities, nor of that resulting from a change of order, but of a rupture of equilibrium whether by addition or diminution of fire or of other elements, then malady supervenes. And should air and fire, whose nature is one with that of the soul itself, prevail in the conflict, then, through the dominance of those elements, destroyers of the flesh, the creature abandons its proper state. For the earthy element is the pabulum of the body, and the water wherewith it is permeated contributes to consolidate it. But it is the aerial element which confers motion, and the fire engenders all energies. The vapors produced by the union and combination of these elements blending with the soul, as it were by fusion, bear her along with them, and clothe her in their own nature, whether good or evil. So long as she remains in this natural association, the soul keeps the rank she has attained. But if a change should occur either in the combination itself or in any of its parts or subdivisions, the vapors, altering their condition, alter likewise the relations between soul and body. The fire and air, aspiring upward, draw with them the soul, their sister, while the watery and terrestrial elements, which tend earthwards like the body, weigh it down and overwhelm it. A Treatise on Initiations, or Asclepios. Chapter 1. Hermes. It is a god who hath brought thee to us, Asclepios, that thou mayst assist at a divine discourse, and one which will be the most truly religious of all we have as yet held, or with which we have been inspired from on high. In understanding it thou wilt be in possession of all blessings, if so be indeed there are several, and if it be not more correct to say there is but one blessing which comprises all. For each one of them is bound to another, all are derived from one and make but one, so that their mutual bonds make separation impossible. This is what thou wilt understand by paying attention to that which we are about to say. But first, Asclepios, go away for a little while and look for another hearer for our discourse. Asclepios proposes to call Ammon. There is no objection to Ammon's presence among us, says Trismegistus. I have not forgotten that I have addressed to him, as to a dear son, several writings on nature and other subjects relating to exoteric teaching. But it is thy name, Asclepios, which I shall inscribe at the head of the present treatise, and call no other person than Ammon. For a discourse upon the holiest matters of religion would be profaned by a too numerous audience. It is an impiety to deliver to the knowledge of a great number, a treatise full of divine majesty. Ammon enters the sanctuary, and completes the holy quartet, too filled with the presence of God. The invitation to devotional silence comes from the lips of Hermes, and in the presence of the attentive souls who hang upon his words, the divine love thus begins. Every human soul, Asclepios, is immortal, but this immortality is not uniform. It differs both in mode and in duration. Asclepios. It is because souls, Trismegistos, are not all of the same quality. Hermes. How quickly thou understandest the reason of things, Asclepios. I have not yet said that all is one and that one is all, since all things were in the Creator before the creation, and we can call him all since all things are his members. Wherefore, throughout all this discourse, bear in mind him who is one and all, the Creator of all things. Everything descends from heaven upon the earth, into the water, into the air. Only fire is vivifying, because it tends upwards. That which tends downwards is subordinate to it. That which descends from above is generative, that which emanates and rises is nutritive. The earth, alone self-supported, is the receptacle of all things, and reconstructs the types which she receives. That universal being which contains all and which is all, puts into motion the soul and the world, all that nature comprises. In the manifold unity of universal life, the innumerable individualities distinguished by their variations, are, nevertheless, united in such a manner that the whole is one. And that everything proceeds from unity. Now this unity, which constitutes the world, is formed of four elements: fire, water, earth, and air, one single world, one single soul, and one single God. Lend me now all the powers and all the penetration of thy thought. For the idea of divinity, which cannot be conceived save by divine assistance, resembles a rapid stream precipitating itself onwards with impetuosity, and often, therefore, outstrips the attention of the listeners, and even of him who teaches. Chapter 2. Heaven, God manifest, regulates all bodies. Their growth and their decline are determined by the sun and the moon. But he who directs heaven, the soul itself and all that exists in the world, is very God, the Creator. From the heights where he reigns descend innumerable influences which spread themselves throughout the world, into all souls both general and particular, and into the nature of things. The world has been prepared by God in order to receive all particular forms. Realizing these forms by means of nature, he has updrawn the world to heaven through the four elements. Everything is in accordance with the designs of God, but that which originates from on high has been separated into individualities in the following manner. The types of all things follow their individualities in such way that the type is a whole, the individual is a part of the type. Thus the gods constitute a type, the genii also. Similarly, men, birds, and all beings which the world contains, constitute types producing individuals resembling them. There is yet another type, without sensation, but not without soul. It consists of those beings which sustain themselves by means of roots fixed in the earth. Individualities of this type are found everywhere. Heaven is full of God. The types of which we have spoken have their habitation extending up to that of the beings whose individualities are immortal. For the individuality is a part of the type, as, for instance, man is a part of humanity, and each one follows the character of its type. Hence it comes that, while all types are imperishable, individuals are not all imperishable. Divinity forms a type of which all the individualizations are as immortal as itself. Among other beings eternity belongs only to the type, the individual perishes, and is perpetuated only by reproduction. There are, then, some mortal individualities. Thus man is mortal, humanity is immortal. Nevertheless, individuals of all the types mix with all the types. Some are primitive, others are produced by these, by God, by genii, by men, and all resemble their respective types. For bodies can be formed only by the divine will, individualities cannot be characterized without the aid of the genii, the education and training of animals cannot be conducted without man. All those genii who have forsaken their own type, and become joined in individuality to an individuality of the divine type, are regarded as neighbors and associates of the gods. The genii who preserve the character of their type, and are properly called genii, love that which relates to mankind. The human type resembles, or even surpasses, theirs, for the individuality of the human is manifold and various, and results from the association mentioned above. It is the indispensable link between nearly all other individualities. The man who has affinity with the gods through the intelligence which he shares with them, and through piety, is the neighbor of God. He who has affinity with the genii approximates himself to them. They who are satisfied with human mediocrity remain a part of the human type. Other human individualities will be neighbors of the types or individualities with which they shall be in affinity. Chapter 3. Man, then, Asclepios, is a great marvel, a creature worthy of respect and adoration. For amid this divine nature he moves as if he himself were a god. He knows the order of the genii, and, aware that he is of the same origin, he despises the human side of his being in order to attach himself exclusively to the divine element. How happily constituted and near to the gods is humanity! In joining himself to the divine, man disdains that which he has in him of the earthly. He connects himself by a bond of love to all other beings, and thereby feels himself necessary to the universal order. He contemplates heaven, and in this happy middle sphere in which he is placed, he loves all that is below him, he is beloved of all that is above. He cultivates the earth, he borrows the speed of the elements, his piercing thought fathoms the deeps of the sea. Everything is clear for him. Heaven does not seem to him too high, for knowledge lifts him to it. The brightness of his mind is not obscured by the thick mists of the air, the earth's gravitation is no obstacle to his efforts, the profundity of deep seas does not disturb him. He includes everything and remains everywhere the same. All animate beings have as it were roots passing downwards. Inanimate beings, on the contrary, have a single root passing from below upwards, and supporting a whole forest of branches. Some creatures nourish themselves upon two elements, others upon one only. There are two kinds of aliment for the two portions of the creature, one for the soul and another for the body. The soul of the world sustains itself by perpetual motion. Bodies develop themselves by means of water and of earth, the elements of the inferior world. The spirit which fills everything, mingles with everything, and vivifies everything, adds consciousness to the intelligence, which, by a peculiar privilege, man borrows from the fifth element, the ether. In man, the consciousness is raised to the knowledge of the divine order. Since I am led to speak of the consciousness, I will presently expound to you its function, which is great and holy as that of divinity itself. But let us first complete the exposition already begun. I was speaking of union with the gods, a privilege which they accord only to humanity. A few men only have the happiness of rising to that perception of the divine which subsists only in God and in the human intelligence. Asclepios. Are, then, not all men similarly conscient, Trismegistos? Hermes. All, Asclepios, have not the true intelligence. They are deceived when they suffer themselves to be drawn after the image of things, without seeking for the true reason of them. It is thus that evil is produced in man, and that the first of all creatures lowers himself almost to the level of the brutes. But I will speak to you of the consciousness and all that belongs to it, when I come to my exposition of the mind. For man alone is a dual creature. One of the two parts of which he consists is single, and, as the Greeks say, essential, that is, formed after the divine likeness. The part which the Greeks call kosmike, that is, belonging to the world, is quadruple, and constitutes the body, which, in man, serves as an envelope to the divine principle. This divine principle, and that which belongs to it, the perceptions of the pure intelligence, conceal themselves behind the rampart of the body. Chapter 4. Asclepios. Why then, O Trismegistos, was it necessary that man should be placed in the world, instead of where God is, to dwell with him in supreme beatitude? Hermes. Thy question is natural, O Asclepios, and I pray God to assist me in replying to it, for everything depends upon his will. Especially those great things which are at this moment the subject of our inquiry. Listen, then, to me, Asclepios. The Lord and author of all things, whom we call God, brought forth a second God, visible and sensible. I describe him thus, not because he himself has sensibility, for this is not the place to treat such a question, but because he is perceptible to the senses. Having then produced this unique being who holds the first rank among creatures and the second after himself, he found his offspring beautiful and filled with all manner of good. And he loved it as his own child. One he willed, then, that another should be able to contemplate this being so great and so perfect whom he had drawn forth from himself, and to this end he created man, endowed with reason and intelligence. The will of God is absolute accomplishment. To will and to do are for him the work of the selfsame instant. And, knowing that the essential could not apprehend all things unless enveloped by the world, he gave to man a body for a dwelling place. He willed that man should have two natures, he united them intimately and blended them in just proportion. Thus, he formed man of spirit and of body, of an eternal nature and of a mortal nature, so that, a creature thus constituted, he might, by means of his double origin, admire and adore that which is celestial and eternal, cultivate and govern that which is upon the earth. I speak here of mortal things, not of the two elements subjected to man, to wit, earth and water, but of things coming from man, which are in him or depending on him, such as the culture of the soil, the pastures, the construction of buildings, of ports, navigation, commerce, and those reciprocal exchanges which are the strongest bond among men. Earth and water form a part of the world, and this terrestrial part is sustained by the arts and sciences, without which the world would be imperfect in the eyes of God. For that which God wills is necessary, and the effect accompanies his will. Nor can it be believed that anything which has seemed good to him can cease to seem good to him, because from the beginning he knew what should be and what should please him. Chapter 5. But I perceive, O Asclepios, that thou art anxious to know in what manner heaven and those who inhabit it can be the object of the aspiration and adoration of man. Learn, then, O Asclepios, that to aspire after the God of heaven and all those who are therein is to render them frequent homage. For alone of all animated beings, divine and human, man is able to render it. The admiration, adoration, praise, and homage of man rejoice heaven and the celestial inhabitants. And the choir of the Muses has been sent among men by the supreme divinity in order that the terrestrial world might not be without the sweet science of hymns. Or rather that the human voice might celebrate him who only is all, since he is the Father of all things. And that the tender harmonies of earth might ever unite themselves with the celestial choirs. Only a few men, rarely endowed with a pure intelligence, are entrusted with this holy function of beholding heaven clearly. Those in whom the confusion of their two natures holds the intelligence captive under the weight of the body, are appointed to have communion with the inferior elements. Man is not, then, debased because he has a mortal part. On the contrary, this mortality augments his aptitudes and his power. His double functions are possible to him only by his double nature. He is constituted in such a manner that he can embrace alike the terrestrial and the divine. I desire, O Asclepios, that thou mayest bring to this exposition all the attention and all the ardor of thy mind, for many are wanting in faith concerning these things. And now I am about to unfold true principles for the instruction of the holiest intelligences. Chapter 6. The Master of Eternity is the first God, the world is the second, man is the third. God, creator of the world and of all that it contains, governs all this universe and subjects it to the rule of man. And man makes of it the object of his special activity. So that the world and man become the appendage one of the other, and it is with reason that in Greek the world is called cosmos. Man knows himself and knows the world. He should, therefore, distinguish that which is in accord with himself, that which is for his use and that which has a right to his worship. While addressing to God his praises and his acts of grace, he should venerate the world which is the image of God, remembering that he is himself the second image of God. For God has two similitudes, the world and man. The nature of man being complex, that part of him which is composed of soul, of consciousness, of mind, and of reason is divine, and from the superior elements seems able to mount to heaven. While his cosmic and mundane part, formed of fire, water, earth, and air, is mortal and remains upon the earth, so that what is borrowed from the world may be restored to it. It is thus that mankind is composed of a divine part and of a mortal part, to wit, the body. The law of this dual being, man, is religion, whose effect is goodness. Perfection is attained when the virtue of man preserves him from desire, and causes him to despise all that is foreign to himself. For terrestrial things, of which the body desires the possession, are foreign to all parts of the divine thought. Such things may indeed be called possessions, for they are not born with us, they are acquired later. They are then foreign to man, and even the body itself is foreign to man, in such wise that man ought to disdain both the object of desire, and that whereby he is made accessible to desire. It is the duty of man to direct his soul by reason, so that the contemplation of the divine may lead him to take but small account of that mortal part which has been joined to him for the sake of the preservation of the lower world. In order that man should be complete in both his parts, observe that each of these possesses four binary subdivisions, to wit, the two hands and the 2 feet, which, with the other organs of the body, place him in relation with the inferior and terrestrial world. And, on the other hand, he possesses 4 faculties, sensibility, soul, memory, and foresight, which permit him to know and perceive divine things. He is able, therefore, to include in his investigations, differences, qualities, effects, and quantities. But if he be too much hindered by the weight of the body, he will be unable to penetrate into the true reason of things. When man, thus formed and constituted, having received for his function from the supreme God, the government of the world and the worship of divinity, acquits himself well of this double duty, and obeys the holy will, what should be his recompense? For, if the world is the work of God, he who by his care sustains and augments its beauty, is the auxiliary of the divine will, employing his body and his daily labor in the service of the work produced by the hands of God. What should be his recompense, if not that which our ancestors have obtained? May it please divine goodness to accord this recompense also to us. All our aspirations and all our prayers tend towards its attainment. May we, delivered from the prison of the body, and from our mortal bonds, return, sanctified and pure, to the divine heritage of our nature. Asclepios. What thou sayest is just and true, O Trismegistus. Such indeed is the price of piety towards God, and of care bestowed on the maintenance of the world. But return to the heavens is denied to those who have lived impiously, upon them is imposed a penance which holy souls escape, to wit, migration into other bodies. The end of this discourse, O Trismegistus, brings us to the hope of an eternal future for the soul, as the result of her life in the world. But this future is for some difficult to believe, for others it is a fable, for others, again, perhaps a subject of derision. For it is a sweet thing to enjoy what one possesses in the corporeal life. Therein lies the evil, which, as one may say, turns the soul's head, attaches her to her mortal part, hinders her from knowing her divine part, and is envious of immortality. For I say unto thee, by a prophetic inspiration, no man after us will choose the simple way of philosophy, which lies wholly in application to the study of divine things, and in holy religion. The majority of men obscure philosophy with diverse questions. How come they to encumber it with sciences which ought not to be comprehended in it, or after what manner do they mingle in it diverse questions? Hermes. O Asclepios, they mingle in it, by means of subtleties, a diversity of sciences which belong not to it, arithmetic, music, geometry. But pure philosophy, whose proper object is holy religion, ought to occupy itself with other sciences only in so far as to admire the regular phases of the stars, their positions, and their courses. Determined by calculation, the dimensions of the earth, its qualities and quantities, the depth of the sea, the power of fire, and to know the effects of all these things, and nature. To adore art, the artist, and his divine intelligence. As for music, that is apprehended when one apprehends reason and the divine order of things. For this order by which everything is ranged singly in the unity of the whole, is indeed an admirable harmony and a divine melody. Asclepios. What then, after us, will men become? Hermes. Misled by the subtleties of the sophists, they will turn aside from the true, pure, and holy philosophy. To adore God in the simplicity of thought and of the soul, to venerate his works, to bless his will, which alone is the fullness of good, this is the only philosophy which is not profaned by the idle curiosity of the mind. But enough on this matter. Chapter 7. Let us begin to speak of mind and of other similar things. In the beginning were God and highly, it is thus that the Greeks term the first matter or substance of the universe. The Spirit was with the universe, but not in the same manner as with God. The things which constitute the universe are not God, therefore before their birth they were not in existence, but they were already contained in that from which they were produced. For besides and without created things is not only that which is not yet born, but that also which has no generative fecundity, and which can bring forth nothing. Everything which has the power of generating contains in germ all that can be born of it, for it is easy to that which is brought forth to bear that which shall bring forth. But the eternal God cannot and never could be born, he is, he has been, he will be always. The nature of God is to be his own principle. But matter, or the nature of the world, and mind, although appearing to be brought forth from the beginning, possess the power of birth and of procreation, fecundative energy. For the beginning is in the quality of nature, who possesses in herself the potentiality of conception and of production. She is then, without any foreign intervention, the principle of creation. It is otherwise with that which possesses only the power of conception by means of mixing with a second nature. The matrix of the universe and of all that it contains appears not to have been itself born, holding however, within it, potentially, all nature. I call that the matrix which contains all things, for they could not have been without a vehicle to contain them. Everything which exists must exist in some place, neither qualities nor quantities, nor positions, nor effects could be distinguished in things having no place and being nowhere. Thus the world, although not having been born, has in it the principle of all birth, since it affords all things a fitting matrix for conception. It is, then, the sum total of qualities and of matter susceptible of creation, although not yet created. Matter, being fecund in all attributes, is able also to engender evil. I put aside, therefore, O Asclepios and Ammon, the question asked by many, could not God hinder evil in the nature of things? There is absolutely nothing to say to them. But for you I will pursue the discourse begun, and I will give the explanation. They affirm that God ought to have preserved the world from evil. Now, evil is in the world as an integral part of it. The sovereign God indeed provided against it inasmuch as was reasonable and possible, when he bestowed upon humanity sentiment, knowledge, and intelligence. By these faculties solely, which place us above other animals, we may escape the snares of evil and vice. The man who is wise and protected by divine intelligence, knows how to preserve himself from such immediately he beholds them, and before he has been entrapped thereby. The foundation of knowledge is supreme goodness. Spirit governs and gives life to all that is in the world. It is an instrument employed by the will of the sovereign God. Thus we ought to comprehend, by intelligence alone, the supreme intelligible called God. By him is directed that secondary sensible God, who contains all spaces, all substances, the matter of all that engenders and produces, in a word, all that is. As for the spirit, it moves and governs all individual beings in the world according to the nature which God has assigned to them. Matter, highly, or the cosmos, is the receptacle, the motion, the replication of everything which God directs, dispensing to each of them that which is necessary to it, and filling them with spirit according to their qualities. The form of the universe is that of a hollow sphere, having in itself the cause of its quality or of its figure, wholly invisible. If, choosing any given point of its surface, one should seek to behold its depths, one would be unable to see anything. It appears visible only by means of those special forms whose images appear graven upon it. It shows itself only in effigy, but in reality it is always invisible in itself. Therefore, the center, the depths of this sphere, if indeed one may call it a place, is in Greek named Hades, the invisible, from Idion, to see, because the center of a sphere cannot be seen from without. Moreover, the types or formative appearances were called ideas, because they are the forms of the invisible. This interior of the sphere which the Greeks call Hades, because it is invisible, the Latins name hell, on account of its profound position. These are the primordial principles, the first sources, of all things. Everything is in them, or by them, or comes forth from them. Asclepios. These principles are, then, O Trismegistus, the universal substance of all individual appearances. Hermes. The world nourishes bodies, the spirit nourishes souls. Thought, the heavenly gift which is the happy privilege of humanity, nourishes intelligence, but few men only have an intelligence capable of receiving such a benefit. Thought is a light which illuminates the intelligence, as the sun illuminates the world. And even more, for the light of the sun may be intercepted by the moon, or by the earth when night comes. But when thought has once penetrated into the human soul, it mingles intimately with her nature, and the intelligence can never again be obscured by any cloud. Therefore, with reason, it has been said that the souls of the gods are intelligences. As for me, I say not this of all of them, but of the great supernal gods. Chapter 8. Asclepios. What, O Trismegistos, are the primordial principles of things? Hermes. I reveal to thee great and divine mysteries, and in beginning this initiation I implore the favor of heaven. There are many orders of the gods, and in all there is an intelligible part. It is not to be supposed that they do not come within the range of our senses; on the contrary, we perceive them, better even than those which are called visible, as this discussion will inform thee. Thou wilt apprehend this fact if thou lendest all thine attention to our discourse. For this order of ideas, so sublime, so divine, so elevated above the intelligence of man, demands an uninterrupted attention without which speech merely flits across the mind and flees away. Or rather, returns to its source and is lost therein. There are, then, gods superior to all appearances; after them come the gods whose principle is spiritual. These gods being sensible, in conformity with their double origin, manifest all things by a sensible nature, each of them illuminating his works one by another. The supreme being of heaven, or of all that is comprehended under this name, is Zeus, for it is by heaven that Zeus gives life to all things. The supreme being of the sun is light, for it is by the disk of the sun that we receive the benefit of the light. The 36 horoscopes of the fixed stars have for supreme being or prince, him whose name is Pantamorphos, or having all forms, because he gives divine forms to divers types. The 7 planets, or wandering spheres, have for supreme spirits fortune and destiny, who uphold the eternal stability of the laws of nature throughout incessant transformation and perpetual agitation. The ether is the instrument or medium by which all is produced. Thus, from the center to the uttermost parts, everything moves, and relations are established according to natural analogies. That which is mortal approximates to that which is mortal, that which is sensible to that which is sensible. The supreme direction belongs to the Supreme Master, in such wise that diversity is resolved into unity. For all things depend from unity or develop from it, and because they appear distant from one another it is believed that they are many, whereas, in their collectivity they form but one. Or rather 2, principles. These 2 principles, whence all things proceed, and by which all exist, are the substance of which things are formed, and the will of him who differentiates them. Asclepios. What is the reason of this, O Trismegistos? Hermes. It is this, Asclepios. God is the Father, the universal ruler, or whatever other name yet more holy and religious may be given to him, and which, because of our intelligence, ought to be held sacred between us. But, in considering his divinity, we cannot define him by any such name. For the voice is a sound resulting from the concussion of the air, and declaring the will of man, or the impression that his mind has received through the senses. This name, composed of a determined number of syllables, serving as a token between the voice and the ear, and, moreover, sensation, breath, air, all that is concerned with, and belonging to its expression, these convey this name of God, and I do not think that a name, however complex it may be, is able to designate the principle of all majesty, the Father and Lord of all things. Nevertheless, it is necessary to give him a name, or rather every name, since he is one and all. Therefore we must say either that all is his name, or we must call him by the names of all things. He, then, who is one and all, possessing the full and entire fecundity of both sexes, ever impregnated by his own will, brings forth all that he has willed to beget. His will is universal goodness, the selfsame goodness that exists in all things. Nature is born of his divinity, in such wise that all things should be as they are, and as they have been, and that nature may suffice to generate of herself all that in the future is to be born. This, O Asclepios, is why and how all things are of 2 sexes. Asclepios. Sayest thou this also of God, O Trismegistus? Hermes. Not only of God, but of all beings, whether animated or inanimate. For it is impossible that anything which exists should be barren. Were we to suppress the fecundity of existing things, it would be impossible for them to remain what they are. For I say that this law of generation is contained in nature, in intellect, in the universe, and preserves all that is brought forth. The two sexes are full of procreation, and their union, or rather their incomprehensible at one ment, may be known as Eros, or as Aphrodite, or by both names at once. If the mind can perceive any one truth more certainly and clearly than another, it is this duty of procreation, which God of universal nature has imposed forever upon all beings, and to which he has attached the supremest charity, joy, delight, longing, and divinest love. It would be needful to demonstrate the power and necessity of this law, if everyone were not able to recognize and perceive it by interior sentiment. Behold, indeed, how at the moment when from the brain the tide of life descends, the two natures lose themselves each in each, and one eagerly seizes and hides within itself the seed of the other. At this moment, by means of this mutual enchainment, the feminine nature receives the virtue of the male, and the male reposes on the bosom of its mate. This mystery, so sweet and so necessary, is enacted in secret, lest the divinity of the two natures should be constrained to blush before the railleries of the ignorant. Were the union of the sexes exposed to irreligious observation. For pious men are not numerous in the world, they are, even, rare, and one might easily count them. In the majority of men malice abides, for lack of prudence and of knowledge of things of the universe. The understanding of divine religion, the basis of all things, leads to the contempt of all vices in the world, and supplies the remedy against them. But when ignorance asserts itself, then vices develop and inflict upon the soul an incurable hurt. Infected by vices, the soul is, as it were, swollen with poison, and can be healed only by knowledge and understanding. Let us then continue this teaching, even though but a small number should profit by it, and learn thou, O Asclepios, why to man only God has given a part of his intelligence and of his knowledge. Wherefore, hearken. God the Father and the ruler, after the gods, one formed men by the union in equal proportions of the corruptible part of the universe and of its divine part. And thus it happened that the imperfections of the universe remained mingled in the flesh. The need of nourishment which we have in common with all creatures, subjects us to desire and to all other vices of the soul. The gods, constituted of the purest part of nature, have no need of the aid of reasoning or of study. Immortality and eternal youth are for them wisdom and knowledge. Nevertheless, seeing the unity of order, and that they might not be strangers to these things, God bestowed on them for their reason and their intelligence, the eternal law of necessity. Alone, among all creatures, whether to avoid or to overcome the evils of the flesh, man has the aid of reason and of intelligence, and the hope of immortality. Man, created good, and capable of immortal life, has been formed of two natures, one divine, the other mortal. And in thus forming him, the divine will render him superior to the gods, who have an immortal nature only, as well as to all mortal beings. For this reason, man, united in close affinity with the gods, pays them religious service, and the gods, in their turn, watch with a tender affection over human affairs. But I speak here only of pious men. As for the wicked, I will say nothing concerning them, in order that I may not, by pausing to talk about them, sully the holiness of this discourse. Chapter 9. And since we are brought to speak of the relationship and of the resemblance between men and gods, behold, O Asclepios, the power and capacity of man. Even as the ruler and father, or to give him the loftiest name. God is the creator of the firmamental gods, so is man the creator of the gods who dwell in temples, pleased with human proximity, and not only themselves illumined, but illuminating. And this both profits man and strengthens the gods. Dost thou marvel, Asclepios? Dost thou lack faith as do many? Asclepios. I am confounded, O Trismegistus, but yielding myself willingly to thy words, I judge man to be happy in that he has obtained such felicity. Hermes. Certes, he deserves admiration, being the greatest of all the gods. For the race of the gods is formed of the purest part of nature, without admixture of other elements, and their visible signs are, as it were, only heads. One but the gods which mankind makes, possess two natures, one divine, which is the first and by far the purest, the other belonging to humanity, which is the matter of which these gods are composed. So that they have not only heads, but entire bodies, with all their limbs. Thus mankind, remembering its nature and its origin, persists in this matter, in the imitation of deity, for even as the Father and Lord has made the eternal gods after the similitude of himself, so also has humanity made its gods in its own image. Asclepios. Dost thou speak of the statues, Trismegistus? Hermes. Yes, of the statues, Asclepios. See how wanting thou art in faith. Of what else should I speak but of the statues, so full of life, of feeling, and of aspiration, which do so many wonderful things. The prophetic statues which predict the future by bestowing dreams and by all manner of other ways, which strike us with maladies, or heal our pains according to our deserts? Art thou not aware, O Asclepios, that Egypt is the image of heaven, or rather, that it is the projection below of the order of things above? If the truth must be told, this land is indeed the temple of the world. Nevertheless, since sages ought to foresee all things, there is one thing thou must know. A time will come when it will seem that the Egyptians have adored the gods so piously in vain, and that all their holy invocations have been barren and unheeded. Divinity will quit the earth and return to heaven, forsaking Egypt, its ancient abode, and leaving the land widowed of religion and bereft of the presence of the gods. Strangers will fill the earth, and not only will sacred things be neglected, but, more dreadful still, religion, piety, and the adoration of the gods will be forbidden and punished by the laws. Then, this earth, hallowed by so many shrines and temples, will be filled with sepulchres and with the dead. O Egypt! Egypt! There will remain of thy religions only vague legends which posterity will refuse to believe, only words graven upon stones will witness to thy devotion. The Scythian, the Indian, or some other neighboring barbarian will possess Egypt. Divinity will return to heaven, humanity, thus abandoned, will wholly perish, and Egypt will be left deserted, forsaken of men and of gods. To thee I cry, O most sacred river, to thee I announce the coming doom. Waves of blood, polluting thy divine waters, shall overflow thy banks, the number of the dead shall surpass that of the living. And if, indeed, a few inhabitants of the land remain, Egyptians by speech, they will in manners be aliens. Thou weepest, O Asclepios. But yet sadder things than these will come to pass. Egypt will fall into apostasy, the worst of all evils. Egypt, once the holy land beloved of the gods and full of devotion for their worship, will become the instrument of perversion, the school of impiety, the type of all violence. Then, filled with disgust for everything, man will no longer feel either admiration or love for the world. He will turn away from this beautiful work, the most perfect alike in the present, the past, and the future. Nor will the languor and weariness of souls permit anything to remain save disdain of the whole universe, this immutable work of God, this glorious and perfect edifice. This manifold synthesis of forms and images, wherein the will of the Lord, lavish of marvels, has united all things in a harmonious and single whole, worthy forever of veneration, of praise and love. Then darkness will be preferred to light, and death will be deemed better than life, nor will any man lift his eyes to heaven. In those days the religious man will be thought mad, the impious man will be hailed as a sage, savage men will be deemed valiant, the evil-hearted will be applauded as the best of men. The soul, and all that belongs thereto, whether born mortal or able to attain eternal life, all those things which I have herein expounded to thee, will be but matters for ridicule, and will be esteemed foolishness. There will even be peril of death, believe me, for those who remain faithful to religion and intelligence. New rites will be instituted, new laws, nor will there be left one holy word, one sacred belief, religious and worthy of heaven and of celestial things. O lamentable separation between the gods and men! Then there will remain only evil demons who will mingle themselves with the miserable human race, their hand will be upon it impelling to all kinds of wicked enterprise. To war, to rapine, to falsehood, to everything contrary to the nature of the soul. The earth will no longer be in equilibrium, the sea will no longer be navigable, in the heavens the regular course of the stars will be troubled. Every holy voice will be condemned to silence, the fruits of the earth will become corrupt, and she will be no more fertile, the very air will sink into lugubrious torpor. Such will be the old age of the world, irreligion and disorder, lawlessness, and the confusion of good men. When all these things shall be accomplished, O Asclepios, then the Lord and Father, the sovereign God who rules the wide world, beholding the evil ways and actions of men, will arrest these misfortunes by the exercise of his divine will and goodness. And, in order to put an end to error and to the general corruption, he will drown the world with a deluge or consume it by fire, or destroy it by wars and epidemics. And thereafter he will restore to it its primitive beauty, so that once more it shall appear worthy of admiration and worship, and again a chorus of praise and of blessing shall celebrate him who has created and redeemed so beautiful a work. This rebirth of the world, this restoration of all good things, this holy and sacred rehabilitation of nature will take place when the time shall come which is appointed by the divine and ever-eternal will of God, without beginning and always the same. Asclepios. Indeed, Trismegistus, the nature of God is will reflected, that is, absolute goodness and wisdom. Hermes. O Asclepios, will is the result of reflection, and to will is itself an act of willing. For he who is the fullness of all things and who possesses all that he wills nothing by caprice. But everything he wills is good, and he has all that he wills, all that is good he thinks and wills. Such is God, and the world is the image of his righteousness. Asclepios. Is the world then good, O Trismegistus? Hermes. Yes, the world is good, Asclepios, as I will inform thee. Even as God accords to all beings and to all orders in the world benefits of diverse kinds, such as thought, soul, and life, so likewise the world itself divides and distributes good things among mortals, changing seasons, the fruits of the earth, birth, increase, maturity, and other similar gifts. And thus God is above the summit of heaven, yet everywhere present and beholding all things. For beyond the heavens is a sphere without stars, transcending all corporeal things. Between heaven and earth he reigns who is the dispenser of life, and whom we call Zeus Jupiter. Over the earth and the sea he reigns who nourishes all mortal creatures, the plants and fruit-bearing trees, and whose name is Zeus Sarapis Jupiter Platonius. And those to whom it shall be given to dominate the earth shall be sent forth and established at the extremity of Egypt, in a city built towards the west, whither, by sea and by land, shall flow all the race of mortals. Asclepios. But where are they now, Trismegistus? Hermes. They are established in a great city, upon the mountain of Libya. Enough of this. Chapter 10. Hermes. Let us speak now of that which is immortal and of that which is mortal. The multitude, ignorant of the reason of things, is troubled by the approach and the fear of death. Death occurs by the dissolution of the body, wearied with its toil. When the number which maintains unity is complete, for the binding power of the body is a number, the body dies. And this happens when it can no longer support the burdens of life. Such, then, is death, the dissolution of the body, and the end of corporeal sensations. It is superfluous to trouble oneself about such a matter. But there remains another necessary law which human ignorance and unbelief despise. Asclepios. What law is this which is thus ignored or unregarded? Hermes. Hearken, O Asclepios. When the soul is separated from the body, she passes under the supreme power of deity, to be judged according to her merits. If found pious and just, she is allowed to dwell in the divine abodes, but if she appears defiled with vice, she is precipitated from height to depth, and delivered over to the tempests and adverse hurricanes of the air, the fire, and the water. Ceaselessly tossed about between heaven and earth by the billows of the universe, she is driven from side to side in eternal penance. Her immortal nature gives endless duration to the judgment pronounced against her. One, how greatly must we fear so dreadful a fate! They who now refuse to believe in such things will then be convinced against their will, not by words, but by beholding, not by menaces, but by the pains they will endure. Asclepios. The faults of men, O Trismegistus, are not then punished only by human laws? Hermes. O Asclepios, all that is terrestrial is mortal. Those who live according to the corporeal state, and who fall short during their life of the laws imposed on this condition, are subjected after death to chastisement so much the more severe as the faults committed by them have remained hidden. For the universal prescience of God will render the punishment proportional to the transgression. Asclepios. Who are they who deserve the greatest penalties, O Trismegistus? Hermes. Those who, condemned by human laws, die a violent death, in such wise that they appear not to have paid the debt they owe to nature, but to have received only the reward of their actions. One, the just man, on the contrary, finds in religion and in piety a great help, and God protects him against all evils. The Father and Lord of all things, who alone is all, manifests himself willingly to all. Not that he shows any man his abode, nor his splendor, nor his greatness, but he enlightens man by intelligence alone, whereby the darkness of error is dissipated, and the glories of the truth revealed. By such means man is united to the divine intelligence, aspiring thither he is delivered from the mortal part of his nature, and conceives the hope of everlasting life. Herein is the difference between the good and the wicked. He who is illumined by piety, religion, wisdom, the service and veneration of God, sees, as with open eyes, the true reason of things, and, through the confidence of this faith, surpasses other men even as the sun the other fires of heaven. For if the sun enlightens the rest of the stars, it is not so much by his greatness and power as by his divinity and sanctity. Thou must see in him, O Asclepios, a secondary God, who rules the rest of the world, and illumines all its inhabitants, animate and inanimate. If the world is an animated being which is, which has been, and which will be always living, nothing in it is mortal. Each of its parts is alive, for in a single creature always living there is no room for death. Thus is God the plenitude of life and of eternity, for he necessarily lives eternally. The sun is lasting as the universe, and governs perpetually all living creatures, being the fount and distributor of all vitality. God is, then, the everlasting ruler of all things which receive life, and of all that give it, the eternal dispenser of the being of the universe. Now, he has once for all bestowed life on all living creatures by an immutable law which I will expound to thee. The movement of the universe is the life of eternity, the sphere of this motion is the eternity of life. The universe will never cease from movement, nor will it ever become corrupt. The permanence of eternal life surrounds it and protects it as a rampart. It dispenses life to all that is in its bosom, it is the bond of all things ordained under the sun. The effect of its motion is double. It is vivified by the eternity which encompasses it, and, in its turn, it vivifies all that it contains, diversifying everything according to certain fixed and determined numbers and seasons. All things are ordained in time by the action of the sun and the stars, according to a divine law. Terrestrial periods are distinguished by the condition of the atmosphere, by the alternatives of heat and cold. Celestial periods by the revolutions of the constellations, which return at fixed intervals of time to the same places in the heavens. The universe is the stage of time, the course and movement of which maintain life. Order and time produce the renewal of all things in the world by recurring seasons. Chapter 11. Since such is the state of the universe, there is nothing immutable, nothing stable, nothing unchanging in nature, either in the heavens or on the earth. God alone, and rightly alone, is wholly full and perfect in himself, of himself, and around himself. He is his own firm stability, nor can he be moved by any impulsion, since all things are in him, and he alone is all. Unless, indeed, we should dare to say, that his movement is in eternity, but this eternity itself is motionless, since all the motion of time revolves in eternity and takes its form therein. God, then, has ever been and is forever immutable, with him likewise is the immutable eternity, bearing within it, as the image of God, the uncreated universe not yet manifest. Hence, the created universe constitutes the imitation of this eternal universe. Time, despite its perpetual movement, possesses, by means of its necessary revolutions on itself, the force and nature of stability. Thus, although eternity is fixed and immutable, nevertheless, since the motion of time unfolds itself in eternity, and this mobility is the very condition of time, it appears that eternity, immutable in itself, yet revolves by means of the time which is within it, and which contains all motion. Thence it results that the stability of eternity appears mobile, and the mobility of time, stable, by the fixed law of their course. And thus it might seem even that God moves in his own immutability. For there is in the immensity of the equilibrium an unchangeable movement, the law of his immensity is unchangeable. That, therefore, which is not subject to sense, the infinite, the incomprehensible, the immeasurable, cannot be sustained, nor carried, nor sought out. Neither can we know whence it comes, whither it goes, where it is, how it is, nor what it is. It is contained in its own supreme stability, and its stability in it, whether God be in eternity, or eternity in God, or both one and the other in the two. Eternity is undefinable by time, and time, which may be defined by number, by alternative, or by periodical revolutions, is eternal. Thus both appear equally infinite and eternal. Stability being the fixed point which serves as the basis of movement, must, because of this stability, hold the principal place. God and eternity are, therefore, the principle of all things, but the world, which is mutable, cannot be considered the principle. The mutability of the world takes precedence of its stability, by means of the law of eternal movement in equilibrium. The whole consciousness of divinity is then immutable, and moves only in equilibrium, it is holy, incorruptible, eternal. Or to define it better, it is eternity, consisting in the very truth of the supreme God, the plenitude of all feeling and knowledge, or indeed, so to speak, in God himself. The consciousness of the natural universe includes all sensible things and species. The consciousness of humanity involves memory, by which man remembers his acts performed. Now, the consciousness of divinity descends even to the human creature. God has not seen fit to extend to all beings this supreme and divine consciousness, lest, were it common to all animals, the glory of it should be diminished. The intelligence of the human mind, whatever may be its quality and quantity, lies wholly in the memory, and it is by means of this tenacity of memory that man has become the lord of the earth. The intelligence of nature, the quality and consciousness of the universe, may be understood by means of the sensible things it contains. Eternity, in the next place, is understood as to its consciousness and its quality, according to the sensible world. But the intelligence of the divine being, the consciousness of the supreme God, is the only truth, and this truth cannot be discovered, no, nor so much as its shadow, in this world full of illusion, of changeful appearances, and of error, where things are known only in the dimension of time. Thou sayest, O Asclepios, what lofty matters we dare to treat. I thank thee, O Most High God, who hast illumined me with the light of thy grace. As for you, O Tat, Asclepios, and Ammon, keep these divine mysteries in the secret place of your hearts, and conceal them in silence. Intellect differs from perception in this, that intellect, by means of study, is competent to understand and to know the nature of the universe. The intellect of the universe penetrates to the consciousness of eternity, and of the supermundane gods. And as for us who are men, we perceive heavenly things as it were darkly through a mist, for thus only does the condition of our human sense permit us to behold them. Feeble, indeed, is our strength to penetrate things so divine, but, when at last we attain to them, we are indeed blessed by the joy of our inward consciousness. Chapter 12. Concerning the void, to which so much importance is attached, my judgment is that it does not exist, that it never has existed, and that it never will exist. For all the various parts of the universe are filled, as the earth also is complete and full of bodies, differing in quality and in form, having their species and their magnitude, one larger, one smaller, one solid, one tenuous. The larger and more solid are easily perceived, the smaller and more tenuous are difficult to apprehend, or altogether invisible. We know only of their existence by the sensation of feeling, wherefore many persons deny such entities to be bodies, and regard them as simply spaces. But it is impossible there should be such spaces. For if indeed there should be anything outside the universe, which I do not believe, then it would be a space occupied by intelligible beings analogous to its divinity, in such wise that the world, which we call the sensible world, would be filled with bodies and creatures appropriate to its nature and quality. We do not behold all the aspects of the world, some of these indeed are very vast, others very small, or else they appear small to us by reason of their remoteness, or the imperfection of our sight. Their extreme tenuity may even cause us to be wholly ignorant of their existence. I speak of the genii, for I hold they dwell with us, and of the heroes who dwell above us, between the earth and the higher airs, wherein are neither clouds nor any tempest. For in truth, O Asclepios, it cannot be said that there is anywhere a void, unless care be taken to define what is signified by void. As, for instance, void of fire, or water, or of some other such thing. And even if this or that space, small or great, be empty of these elements, nothing can be empty of the spirit and aerial fluid. The same thing may be said of place. This word alone cannot be understood, unless it is applied to something. By omitting the chief term, the sense intended is lost. Thus, it is correct to say, the place of water, the place of fire, or of any other similar thing. For as it is impossible that there should be space void of everything, so also it is impossible there should be place by itself. If a place is supposed without its contents, then it is an empty place, and, in my judgment, such a place does not exist in the universe. But if nothing be void, then there can be no such thing as place in itself, unless it be qualified by length, breadth, and depth, even as human bodies have distinguishing signs. If, then, these things be so, O Asclepios, and you who are also present, know that the intelligible world, that is to say, God, who is perceived only by the eye of intelligence, is incorporeal. And that nothing corporeal can be mingled with his nature, nor anything that can be defined by quality, quantity, or numeration, for there is nothing of such a kind in him. This world, which is called the sensible world, is the receptacle of all sensible appearances, qualities, and bodies, nor can this universe exist without God. For God is all, and all come forth from him, and depend on his will. He contains everything that is good, orderly, wise, perfect, perceptible for him alone, and intelligible for him alone. Apart from him nothing has been, nothing is, nothing will be, for all proceed from him, are in him, and by him. Whether manifold qualities, vast quantities, magnitudes exceeding measurement, species of all forms. If thou understandest these things, Asclepios, render thanks to God. And, observing the universe, comprehend clearly that this sensible world, and all that it contains, is enfolded, as in a garment, by the supernal world. O Asclepios, beings of every kind, whether mortals, immortals, reasonable, animate, inanimate, to whatever class they may belong, bear the impress of that class. And although each of them has the general appearance of its kind, there are yet among them special differences. Even so, the human kind is uniform, and man may be defined by his type. Nevertheless, under this general likeness, men present many dissimilarities. For the character which proceeds from God is incorporeal, as is all that is comprehended in intelligence. Since the two principles which determine form are corporeal and incorporeal, it is impossible that they should generate a form wholly resembling something else, at whatever distance of time or of place. Forms, nevertheless, are as changeful as the moments in an hour's space, in the movable circle wherein is that omniform God of whom we have spoken. Therefore the type persists, producing as many images of itself as the revolution of the world has instants of time. The world has changes in its revolution, but species has neither period nor change. Thus the forms of every species are permanent, and yet various in the same species. Asclepios. And does the world also vary in its species, Trismegistus? Hermes. Why then, Asclepios, hast thou been asleep all the while we have been discoursing? What is the world, or of what is it composed, if not of all that is generated in it? Or dost thou speak of heaven, of the earth, and of the elements, for other beings continually change in appearance? But even so the heaven, now rainy, now dry, now hot, now cold, now clear, now covered with clouds, has many successive changes of aspect beneath its apparent uniformity. So also the earth constantly changes its aspect, for now it brings forth its fruits, now it hides them in its bosom, bearing products of diverse quality and quantity. Here is repose, there is movement, and every variety of trees, flowers, seeds, properties, odors, savors, forms. Fire, likewise, has its manifold and divine transformations, for the sun and the moon have all manner of aspects comparable to the multitude of images beheld in mirrors. And now we have discoursed enough of these things. Chapter 13. Let us return to man, and inquire concerning the divine gift of reason which entitles him to be called a reasonable creature. Among all the wonders we have noted in man, that which above all commands admiration is this, that man has discovered the divinity of nature, and has made it efficient to his designs. Our ancestors, wandering astray in matters of faith concerning the gods, and unable to lift their minds to the divine knowledge and religion, discovered the art of making gods. And, having discovered it, they invested their products with appropriate virtues drawn from the nature of the world. And, as they could not make souls, they evoked the spirits of genii and angels, and endowed with them the holy images and sacraments, thus enabling their idols to exercise powers for good or ill. In such wise thine ancestor, O Asclepios, the inventor of medicine, has a temple on the Libyan mountain by the shores of the crocodile-frequented river, where also lies enshrined all of him which belonged to the earth, that is, his body. For the rest of him, his better part, or rather, indeed, himself, because the principle of consciousness and of life is the whole man, is restored to heaven. And now, by his divinity, he lends help to men in their sicknesses, who once instructed them in the art of healing. So also, Hermes, my own ancestor, whose name I bear, now enshrined in the country which is called after him, hears the prayers of those who come thither from all parts of the land to obtain of him assistance and health. Behold, again, what blessings Isis, the spouse of Osiris, confers upon men when she is favorable to them, and what ills she inflicts when she is angered. For these mundane and earthly gods are accessible to wrath, being formed and composed by men out of nature. Of such sort in Egypt is the adoration paid to animals, and thus also do cities honor the souls of those men who, in their lifetime, gave them laws and whose names they preserve. And for this reason, O Asclepios, those deities which are adored in some places, receive in others no worship, whence arise many wars between the cities of Egypt. Asclepios. And of what kind, O Trismegistus, is the divinity of these gods who inhabit the earth? Hermes. It consists in the divine virtue, which naturally subsists in herbs, rocks, and aromatic principles, wherefore these deities love frequent sacrifices, hymns, and praises. And sweet music resembling the celestial harmony, which heaven-like rite, attractive to their sacred nature, draws them and retains them in their shrines, so that they patiently endure their long sojourn among men. It is thus that men make gods. Neither must thou suppose, O Asclepios, that the acts of these terrestrial deities are controlled by hazard. For while the supernal gods abide in the heights of heaven, keeping each the order which belongs to him, these gods of ours have also their special functions. Some predict by means of lots and divination the events of the future. Others preside, in various ways, over things depending on their care, or come to our assistance as allies, as kinsmen, or as friends. Chapter 14. Asclepios. O Trismegistus, what is the part taken in the order of things by destiny or fate? If the heavenly gods rule the universe, and the mundane deities control special events, where is the part of destiny? Hermes. O Asclepios, destiny is the necessity which compels all things that happen, the chain which binds together all events. It is thus the cause of things, the supreme deity, or rather the second God created by God, that is the law of all things in heaven and earth established upon divine ordinances. Destiny and necessity are bound together indissolubly. Destiny produces the beginning of all things, necessity enforces the effect which ensues from these beginnings. And hence arises order, that is, the sequence and disposition of things accomplished in time, for nothing is performed without order. And thus the world is perfected, for the world is founded on order, and in order the universe consists. Therefore these three, destiny, necessity, and order, depend absolutely on the will of God who governs the world by his divine law and reason. These three principles have no will in themselves. Inflexible and inaccessible to favor as to anger, they are but the instruments of the eternal reason, which is immutable, invariable, unalterable, indissoluble. First comes destiny, containing, like newly sown soil, the germs of future events. Necessity follows, urging them to their consummation. Lastly, order maintains the fabric of things established by destiny and necessity. For all this is an everlasting sequence without beginning or end, sustained by its immutable law in the continuity of eternity. It rises and falls alternately, and as time rolls onward, that which had disappeared, again rises uppermost. For such is the condition of the circular movement. All things are interchained in such wise that neither beginning nor end can be distinguished, and they appear to precede and follow each other unceasingly. But as for accident and chance, they pervade all mundane affairs. Chapter 15. And now, inasmuch as it is given to man, and inasmuch as God has permitted, we have spoken concerning everything. It remains only, therefore, that we should bless and pray to God and return to our mortal cares, having satisfied our minds by treating of sacred things which are the food of the mind. Therewith, coming forth from the sanctuary, they address to God their orisons, turning themselves to the south, because when the sun begins to decline, he who would praise the god should direct his gaze thither, as in like manner, at sunrise, he should look towards the orient. And even while they pronounced their invocations, Asclepios, in a low voice, spoke thus: O Tatius, let us ask our Father that our prayers may be accompanied with odors of incense and perfumes. Trismegistus heard, and was moved. May the omen be favorable, O Asclepios, he said. It is almost a sacrilege to burn incense or any other perfume during prayer. He who is all and who contains all, desires nothing. Let us give him praise and adoration only. The divinest odors are acts of grace which mortals render to God. We give thee thanks, O Lord Most High, for by thy grace we have received the light of thy knowledge. May thy name be adored and venerated, only name by which deity is praised according to the religion of our fathers. For thou dost vouchsafe to accord to all of us the ancestral faith, piety, love, and the most worthy and gracious gifts, in that thou bestowest upon us consciousness, reason, and intelligence. By consciousness we discern thee, by reason we seek thee, and intelligence endows us with the joy of understanding thee. Save by thy divine power, let us be glad in beholding the manifestation of thyself, let us be glad that, from the hour of our sojourn in the body, thou dost deign to consecrate us to eternity. The only joy of man is the knowledge of thy majesty. We have known thee, O magnificent light, who art apprehended by intelligence alone. We have known thee, O true way of life, inexhaustible source of all births. We have known thee, O generative plenitude of all nature, eternal permanence. And in this our oration, adoring the sanctity of thy holiness, we ask of thee only to grant that we may persevere in the love of thy knowledge, in such wise that we may never separate ourselves from this manner of life. With which hope being filled, we go forth to take a pure repast without animal flesh. Fragments of the Book of Hermes to his son Tatios. Chapter 1. Trismegistus. It is for the love of men and for the veneration of God, O my son, that I begin to write this. For there is no other true religion than to meditate on the universe and give thanks to the Creator, and these things I shall not cease to do. Tatios. O Father, if nothing here below be real, how can one wisely employ one's life? Trismegistus. Be religious, my son, religion is lofty philosophy, without philosophy there is no lofty religion. He who instructs himself concerning the universe, its law, its principle, and its end, gives thanks for all things to the Creator as to a gracious Father, a good protector, a faithful teacher. This is religion, and by means of it we know where truth is and what it is. Knowledge increases religion. For when once the soul, imprisoned within the body, has lifted herself to the perception of the real good and of truth, she cannot again fall back. The might of love, and the oblivion of all evil things, forbid the soul who knows her Maker to separate herself from the good. Herein, my son, is the aim of religion. If thou canst attain thereunto, thy life will be pure, thy death happy, thy soul will know whither she ought to direct her flight. Herein is the only way which leads to truth, which, indeed, our ancestors trod, and by which they arrived at the attainment of the good. This way is beautiful and even, nevertheless, it is difficult for the soul to walk therein so long as she is immured within the prison of the body. For, first, she must contend against herself, and having accomplished a division of herself, she must submit to that part of herself which is first in dignity. For the one struggles against the two, that would fain rise, but these would drag it downwards. Nor is victory the same to both sides, for the one tends towards the good, and the two towards evil, the one would be free, the two cling to servitude. If the two be overcome, there remains a bulwark of defense for them and for their master, but if the one be the weaker, it is drawn away by the two, and punished in this life here below. It is this one, my son, which ought to be thy guide. See that thou anoint thyself with oil for the struggle, maintain the fight for life, and remain victorious. And now, my son, I am about to sum up our principles. Thou wilt understand my words by remembering that which thou hast learnt. All beings are endowed with motion, non-being alone is motionless. All bodies transform themselves, some only decompose. All creatures are not mortal nor are all immortal. That which is dissoluble is corruptible, that which is permanent is immutable, that which is immutable is eternal. That which is continually generated is continually corrupted, but that which is born but once is not corrupted and is not changed into any other thing. First God, then the universe, and thirdly man, the universe for man, and man for God. The emotional part of the soul is mortal, her rational part is immortal, all substance is immortal, all substance is subjected to change. All being is dual, no being is permanent. All things are not animated by soul, but all that is being is animated by soul. All that is passive is sentient, all that is sentient is transient. Everything that suffers and enjoys is a mortal creature, all that enjoys and suffers not is a being immortal. Not every body is subject to disease, but every body so subject is destructible. In God is intelligence, in man is reason. Reason is in intelligence, intelligence is in transient. There is nothing real in the corporeal, nothing false in the incorporeal. Everything that is born changes, but not everything born corrupts. There is nothing perfect upon earth, nor anything evil in heaven. God is perfect, man is evil. The good comes by will, evil against will. The gods chose the good as good. Time is divine, law is human. Evil is the pabulum of the world, time is the destruction of man. All things in heaven are immutable, nothing is immutable on earth. In heaven, then, is no servitude, on earth there is no freedom. Nothing in heaven is unknown, on earth nothing is known. There is nothing in common between celestial things and things terrestrial. All is irreproachable in heaven, on earth nothing is without reproach. The immortal knows no mortality, nor does the mortal know immortality. That which is sown does not always come up, but that which comes up has always been sown. Corruptible bodies have two periods of existence, from conception to birth, and from birth to death, but the eternal entity has one period only from the moment of being. Dissoluble bodies increase and diminish. Dissoluble matter divides itself according to two contrary terms, destruction and birth. Immortal substance divides itself either into itself or into its similars. The birth of man is a destruction, the destruction of man is an element of birth. That which ends begins, that which begins ends. Among beings, some are in bodies, some in forms, some in energies. The body is in forms, form and energy are in bodies. The immortal receives nothing from the mortal, but the mortal receives from the immortal. The mortal enters not into an immortal form, but the immortal enters into a mortal body. Energies tend not upward, but downward. That which is on earth profits not that which is in heaven, but all that is in heaven profits that which is on earth. Heaven contains immortal entities, earth contains perishable bodies. Earth is irrational, heaven is reasonable. Celestial things are under the power of heaven, terrestrial things are upon earth. Heaven is the primordial element. Divine providence is order, necessity is the instrument with which providence works. Fortuity is the vehicle of disorder, the false image of energy, a delusive seeming. What is God but immutable good, or man but continual evil? In remembering these principles, thou wilt easily recollect the things I have explained to thee more at length, and which are therein resumed. But avoid speaking of them to the multitude, not that I desire to prohibit the multitude from knowing these things, but that I would not have thee exposed to the mockeries of the vulgar. Like attracts like, but between dissimilars there is no fellowship. These discourses ought to have but a small number of auditors, else before long they will have none at all. There is, moreover, a special peril attaching to them, for by means of them the wicked may be instigated to do worse. Keep thyself, therefore, from the crowd, which cannot understand the virtue of these discourses. Tatios. What meanest thou, my father? Trismegistos. Hearken, my son. The human race is drawn towards evil. Evil is its nature, and pleases it. If men should learn that the world is created, that all is done according to providence and necessity, and that by necessity and destiny all things are governed, they would readily begin to despise all things because they are created, to attribute vice to destiny, and to give the rein to all manner of iniquity. Therefore, abstain from the crowd, so that by means of ignorance the vulgar may be kept within bounds, even through fear of the unknown. Chapter 2. Tatios. Thou hast well explained to me these things, my father, but instruct me yet again concerning this. Thou hast told me that knowledge and art are activities of the reason, and now thou sayest that brute animals are so called because they have no reason. Whence it must necessarily follow that they have neither knowledge nor art. Trismegistus. It necessarily so follows, my son. Tatios. How then is it, father, that we behold certain animals making use of scientific and constructive knowledge? As, for instance, the ants who store up provisions for the winter, the birds who devise nests, the cattle who know their stables and return thither? Trismegistus. It is neither science nor art that directs them, my son, but nature. Science and art are acquired, but these creatures have acquired nothing. That which is naturally performed is the product of the universal activity. Science and art belong only to those who have acquired them. Functions which are the common heritage are natural functions. Thus, all men can make use of their eyes, but not all are musicians, archers, hunters, and so forth. Some only among the many learn a science or an art, and exercise it. If in like manner certain ants only did what other ants do not, then thou mightest say with reason that they possess the science or the art of storing provisions. But all act in the same way under the impulsion of nature and without deliberate intent, whence it is evident that neither science nor art directs them. Activities, O Tatios, are incorporeal, and are exercised in the body and by the body. Insomuch as they are incorporeal, thou mayest indeed call them immortal. Insomuch as they cannot be exercised but by means of a body, I say that they are always in a body. That of which the end and cause are determined by providence and necessity cannot remain inactive. That which is shall still be, therein is its body and its life. For which reason there will always be bodies, wherefore the creation of bodies is an eternal function. For terrestrial bodies are corruptible, nevertheless, bodies are necessary as abodes and as instruments for the energies. Now, the energies are immortal, and that which is immortal is always active. The creation of bodies is, then, a function, and an eternal function. The energies or faculties of the soul are not all at once manifest. Certain of them are manifest from the time of the birth of man, in the non-rational part of his soul. And as the reasonable part develops itself with age, the loftier faculties also lend their assistance. The faculties are attached to bodies. They descend from divine forms into mortal forms, and by them bodies are created. Each of the faculties exercises a function either of the body or of the soul, but they subsist in the soul independently of the body. For the energies are eternal, but the soul is not always imprisoned in a mortal body. She can live without it, yet the faculties cannot manifest themselves unless in a body. This, my son, is an arcane discourse. The body cannot remain without the soul, but being can. Tatios. What meanest thou, my father? Trismegistus. Understand me, O Tatios. When the soul is separated from the body indeed remains, but it is undermined by interior dissolution, and ends by disintegrating. Such an effect cannot be produced without an active cause, therefore, there remains some energy in the body after the withdrawal of the soul. Between an immortal entity and a mortal entity there is this difference, that the first is formed of simple substance, but not so the second. One is active, the other passive. All active being dominates, all passive being obeys. One is free, and governs, the other is in servitude, and subject to impulsion. Now, the energies are not only in animate bodies, but in inanimate, such as wood, stone, and other like things. By means of the energies these things increase, fructify, ripen, decompose, dissolve, putrefy, disintegrate, and undergo all those changes of which inanimate bodies are susceptible. For energy is that which produces change, or becoming. And becoming is multiple, or rather universal. Never will anything capable of birth be wanting to the universe, because beings are continually brought forth by it and continually destroyed. All energy is then indestructible, no matter of what nature or in what body it is manifest. But among the energies, some are exerted in divine entities, some in mortal entities, some are universal, others special, some act upon species, others on individuals pertaining to these. Divine energies are exerted in eternal entities, and are perfect as these. Partial energies act by means of living beings, special energies in everything which exists. Whence it results, my son, that the whole universe is full of energies. For since energies necessarily manifest in bodies, there are many bodies in the universe. Nevertheless, the energies are more numerous than the bodies, for often there exist 1, 2, 3 energies in a body, without counting those which are universally distributed. I call those universal energies which are inseparable from bodies and which manifest themselves by sensations and movements, and without which no body could exist. Far otherwise are those special energies which manifest themselves in human minds by art, science, and labor. The sensations accompany the energies, or rather are the consequence of these last. Understand, O my son, the difference there is between the energies and the sensations. Energy comes from above, sensation is of the body, and from the body has its being. It is the seat of the energy, which manifests by means of it, and from which it obtains, as it were, a vehicle. For this reason I say that sensations are corporeal and mortal, their existence is bound up with that of the body, they are born therewith, and therewith they die. Immortal energies have not sensation, precisely because of the nature of their essence. For there can be no other sensation than that of some good or some evil which happens to a body or which departs therefrom, and immortal entities are not subject to these accidents. Teshos. Sensation, then, is experienced by all bodies? Trismegistos. Yes, my son, and in all bodies the energies act. Teshos. Even in inanimate bodies, my father? Trismegistos. Even in inanimate bodies. Sensations are of different kinds, those of reasonable beings are accompanied by reason, those of beings without reason are purely corporeal. Those of inanimate beings are passive, and consist only in growth and decay. Starting from one principle and arriving at one end, passion and sensation are alike the product of the energies. In animate beings, there are 2 other energies which accompany the passions and the sensations, to wit, joy and sorrow. Without these, the animated being, and, above all, the reasonable being, would feel nothing. They may then be considered as modes of the affections in reasonable beings, or indeed in all living beings. They are activities manifested by the sensations, corporeal movements produced by the irrational parts of the soul. Joy and sorrow are alike evil, for joy, that is, the sensation accompanied by pleasure, draws after it great evils, sorrow, likewise, involves penalties and suffering, yet more severe. Both joy and sorrow, then, are evil. Teshos. Is sensation the same thing in the soul and in the body, my father? Trismegistos. What meanest thou, my child, by the sensation of the soul? Teshos. The soul is truly incorporeal. But sensation is as a body, my father, for it exists in a body. Trismegistos. If we place it in the body, my son, we indeed assimilate it either to the soul or to the energies, which, although in the body, are incorporeal. But sensation is neither an energy nor a soul, nor anything distinct from the body, it is not, therefore, incorporeal. If it be not incorporeal, it must necessarily be corporeal, for there is nothing which is neither corporeal nor incorporeal. Chapter 3. The Lord, the creator of immortal forms, O Teshos, after having accomplished his work, made nothing further, nor does he now make anything. Once consigned to themselves and united to one another, these eternal forms move without having need of anything. Or if, indeed, they are necessary one to another, they have at least no need of any extraneous impulsion, since they are immortal. Such ought, indeed, to be the nature of the creations of the Supreme God. But our Maker has a body. He has brought us forth, and unceasingly he brings forth, and will bring forth dissoluble and mortal bodies, for he ought not to imitate his own Creator, and, moreover, he cannot. For the first has evolved his creations from his own essence, primordial and incorporeal, the second has formed us of that which is corporeal and engendered. Whence it follows naturally, that heavenly forms born of incorporeal essence are imperishable, while our bodies, being constituted of corporeal matter, are consequently weak in themselves, and need extraneous assistance. For how, indeed, could the combination which composes our bodies be sustained, if it were not continually fed and supported by elements of the same nature? The earth, the water, the fire, and the air flow into us and renew our covering. We are so weak that we cannot even endure a single day of movement. Thou knowest well, my son, that without the repose of the night our bodies would not resist the day's toil. For this reason our good Creator, in his universal providence, has ensured the continual life of his creatures by devising sleep, the restorer of movement, and by assigning to repose an equal or even longer time. Meditate, my son, on this virtue of sleep, opposed to that of the soul, and not less energetic. For if the function of the soul be movement, bodies cannot live without slumber, which loosens and unbinds the yoke of the organism, and by its restoring action dispenses to it the matter which it needs, giving water to the blood, earth to the bones, air to the nerves and vessels, fire to the eyes. And hence the great pleasure which the body finds in sleep. Chapter 4. Great and divine power is established, O my son, in the midst of the universe, beholding all that is done by men upon earth. In the divine order all is governed by providential necessity. Among men the same function belongs to justice. The first of these governments include celestial things, for the gods neither will, nor can, transgress, not being subject to error, which is the source of sin, they are sinless. The second, justice, is charged to correct, upon earth, the evil which happens among men. The human race, being mortal, and formed of corruptible matter, is subject to fall away when the sight of divine things does not sustain it. Herein justice exerts its action. By means of the energies which he draws from nature, man is subject to destiny, by the errors of his life, to justice. Chapter 5. Here, then, is that which can be said of the three tenses. They are not by themselves, and they are not bound together. Again, they are bound together and are by themselves. Can the present be supposed without the existence of the past? One cannot exist without another, for the present is generated by the past, and from the present the future comes forth. If we wish to go to the root of the matter, we must reason thus: the past tense is withdrawn into that which no longer is, the future is not so long as it has not become present. The present, in its turn, ceases to be itself the instant that it remains. Can that which does not endure for an instant and which has no fixed center be called present when it cannot even be said to exist? Moreover, since the past is indistinguishable from the present, and the present from the future, they become one. There is among them identity, unity, continuity. Therefore time is continuous and divisible, even while it is one and identical. Chapter 6. O my son, matter becomes, formerly it was, for matter is the vehicle of becoming. One becoming is the mode of activity of the uncreate and foreseeing God. Having been endowed with the germ of becoming, matter is brought into birth, for the creative force fashions it according to the ideal forms. Matter not yet engendered, had no form, it becomes when it is put into operation. Chapter 7. To speak of the real with certainty, O Tatios, is an impossible thing to man, himself an imperfect creature, composed of imperfect parts, and constituted of an assemblage of foreign particles. Nevertheless, as much as it is possible and permissible to me, I affirm that reality is only in eternal beings, the forms of which also are real. Fire is but fire and no more, earth is nothing else than earth, air is only air. Put our bodies are compounded of all these, we have in us fire, earth, water, and air, which yet are neither fire, nor earth, nor water, nor air, nor anything truly. If, then, from the beginning reality is foreign to our constitution, how shall we behold reality, or speak thereof, or even understand it, unless indeed by the will of God? Mundane things, O Tatios, are not then themselves real, but the simulacra of reality, and not all are even such, some are but illusion and error, O Tatios, fantastic appearances, mere phantoms. When such an appearance receives an influx from above, then, indeed, it becomes a similitude of the real, but without this superior influence it remains an illusion. In the same way a portrait is a painted image of a body, but not the body it represents. It appears to have eyes, but sees nothing, ears, but hears nothing, and so on of the rest of it. It is an image which deceives the sight, it appears a reality, and is but a shadow. Those who behold not the false behold the true. If, then, we understand and see everything as it truly is, we see the real. But if we see that which is not, we can neither understand nor know anything of the real. Tatios. There is, then, my father, a real even upon earth? Trismegistus. Reality is not upon the earth, my son, and it cannot be thereon, but it can be comprehended by a few men to whom God vouchsafes the divine vision. Nothing on earth is real, there are only appearances and opinions on earth, yet all is real for intelligence and reason. Wherefore to think and to speak the truth this indeed may be called real. Tatios. What sayest thou? It is right to think and speak that which truly is, and yet nothing is true upon earth? Trismegistus. This certainly is true, that we know nothing of truth. How should it be otherwise, my son? Truth is the supreme virtue, the sovereign good which is not obscured by matter, nor circumscribed by the body, the naked good, evident, unalterable, august, immutable. Now, the things which are here below thou sayest, my son, are incompatible with the good, they are perishable, changing, various, passing from form to form. That which is not even identical with itself, how can it be real? All that transforms itself is elusive, not only in itself, but by the appearances which it presents to us one after another. Tatios. Is not even man real, my father? Trismegistus. He is not real, my son, as man. The real consists solely in itself, and remains what it is. Man is composed of manifold elements, and does not continue identical with himself. So long as he inhabits a body he passes from one age to another, and from one form to another. Often, after but a short interval of time, parents no longer are able to recognize their children, nor children their parents. That which changes in such wise as to be no longer recognizable as itself, can it be a real thing, Tatios? Should we not rather think this succession of diverse appearances an illusion? Look only on the eternal and the good as the real. Man is transient, therefore he is not real, he is but appearance, and appearance is the supreme illusion. Tatios. Then the celestial bodies themselves are not real, my father, since they also vary. Trismegistus. That which is subject to birth and to change is not real, but the works of the Great Father may receive from him a real substance. Nevertheless, there is in them a certain falsity, seeing that they too are variable, for nothing is real save that which is identical with itself. Tatios. What, then, may we call indeed real, my father? Trismegistus. The sun, the only one of all creatures that changes not, and which remains the same. For this reason is confided to him alone the ordinance of the universe, he is the chief and the maker of everything. I venerate him and prostrate myself before his truth, and, after the first unity, I recognize in him the Creator. Teishos. And what, then, is the primordial reality, O my father? Trismegistos. He who is one and alone, O Teishos, he who is not made of matter, nor in any body, who has neither color nor form, who changes not, nor is transmuted, but who always is. That which is illusion is perishable, my son. The providence of the real has limited and will limit by dissolution all mundane things, for dissolution is the condition of all births. All that is brought forth dissolves in order to be again brought forth. It is necessary that out of dissolution life should come into existence, and that life in its turn should decay, in order that the generation of creatures should never cease. Behold, then, in this perpetual birth, the Creator before all. Creatures born of dissolution are but shadows, they become at one time this, at another that. For they cannot be the same, and how is it possible for that which is not identical with itself, to be a real thing? Such must then, my son, be called appearances, and man must be regarded as an appearance of humanity. As, also, a child is an appearance of childhood, a young man of adolescence, an adult of manhood, an old man of senility. For how shall it be said that a man is a man, a child, a youth, a grown man, an old man, since by incessant transformations they deceive us both as to what they were, and what they have become? Behold, then, in all these things, my son, only the elusive appearances of a superior reality, and since, indeed, this is the case, I define illusion as the expression of the real. Chapter 8. To understand God is difficult, to speak of God, impossible. For the corporeal cannot express the incorporeal, the imperfect cannot comprehend the perfect. How is the eternal to be associated with the transient? The first abides forever, the other is fleeting, the first is the real, the other is a reflected shadow. As much as weakness differs from strength, or smallness from greatness, so much the mortal differs from the divine. The distance which divides them one from the other obscures the vision of the beautiful. Bodies are visible to sight, and that which the eye beholds the tongue is able to express. But that which has not any body, nor appearance, nor form, nor matter, cannot be apprehended by sense. I understand, O Teishos, I understand that which it is impossible to define, that is God. Fragments of the Writings of Hermes to Ammon. Chapter 1. That which rules the universe is providence, that which contains the universe and limits it is necessity, destiny impels and enfolds all things by the compulsory force which belongs thereto. It is destiny which is the cause of birth and of the dissolution of life. The universe, then, first receives providence, the first ordained. Providence extends to the skies, about which the gods revolve, in perpetual and untiring motion. There is destiny because there is necessity. Providence foresees, destiny determines, the position of the stars. Such is the universal law. Chapter 2. All things are produced by nature and destiny, nor is any place void of providence. Providence is the free will of the supreme God, whence two spontaneous forces, necessity and destiny. Destiny is subject to providence and to necessity, and to destiny are subject the stars. Therefore, no man can escape from destiny, nor arm himself against the action of the stars. For they are the instruments of destiny, by their means the will of destiny is accomplished throughout all nature and in human existence. Chapter 3. The soul is, then, an incorporeal essence, and even when she is in a body, she does not wholly lose her manner of being. Her essence is that of perpetual movement, the spontaneous movement of thought, yet is she not moved in anything else, nor towards anything else, nor for anything else. For she is a primordial force, and that which is primal needs not that which is secondary. The expression, in anything, is applicable to place, to time, to nature, towards anything, is applicable to a harmony, to a form, to a figure. For anything, is applicable to the body, because time, place, nature, and form are related to the body. All these terms are conjoined by reciprocal bonds. The body requires place, for it is not possible to conceive of a body unless also of a place occupied by it. A body changes its nature, such change is not possible unless in time, and by means of movement in nature, nor can the component parts of a body be united unless by harmony of form. Space exists on account of corporeity, it contains the changes thereof and suffers it not to be annihilated in these changes. The body passes from one condition to another, but in quitting its first condition it ceases not to be body, it takes only another condition. It was body, it remains body, its state alone varies, wherefore, that which changes in corporeity is quality and mode of being. Place, time, and natural movement, themselves bodiless, have each their special property. The property of space is to contain, the property of time is interval and number, the property of nature is movement, the property of harmony is affinity, the property of body is change. The property of soul is thought. Chapter 4. The soul is then an incorporeal essence. If she had a body she would be unable to preserve herself, for every body has need of breath and of life which consists in order. Wherever there is birth there is flux ion. To become presupposes magnitude, that is augmentation. Augmentation involves diminution, which, in turn, brings about destruction. That which receives the form of life participates in being by means of the soul. In order to produce existence, it is necessary to exist. Existence I define to be a reasonable becoming and participation in intelligent life. Life constitutes the creature, intelligence renders it reasonable, the body makes it mortal. The soul is then incorporeal, and possesses an immutable force. Can an intelligent creature exist without a living essence? Can he be rational if an intelligent essence does not maintain in him rational life? If intelligence does not manifest itself in all creatures, it is on account of the constitution of the body in regard to harmony. If heat dominates in the constitution thereof, the creature is volatile and ardent, if cold dominates, it is heavy and slow. Nature distributes the elements of the body according to a law of harmony. This harmonic combination has three forms, the hot, the cold, and the temperate. Conjunction is established according to stellar influence. The soul appropriates the body destined to her, and causes it to live by the operation of nature. Nature assimilates the harmony of bodies to the disposition of the stars, and the combination of their elements to the harmony of the stars, so that there may be reciprocal sympathy. For the purpose of stellar harmony is to engender sympathies in agreement with destiny. Chapter 5. The soul is then, O Ammon, an essence having its end in itself, receiving from the beginning the life prepared for her, and attracting to herself, as a material, a certain reason endowed with passion and desire. Passion is a matter, if it enters into accord with the intelligent part of the soul, it becomes courage, and does not yield to fear. Desire also is a matter, in association with the rational part of the soul, it becomes aspiration and yields not to voluptuousness. For reason enlightens the blindness of desire. When the faculties of the soul are thus coordinated under the supremacy of reason, they produce justice. The government of the faculties of the soul belongs to the intellectual principle which subsists in itself in its provident reason, having for authority its own reason. It governs all like a magistrate, its provident reason serves it as counselor. The reason of this principle is the cognizance of the reasons which furnish the image of rationality to the irrational. An image relatively obscure when compared with reason, but rational when compared to the irrational, as an echo compared to a voice, or the light of the moon compared to that of the sun. Passion and desire are ordained according to a certain reason, they mutually attract each other, and establish between them a circulatory current of thought. Every soul is immortal, and always in movement. For we have seen that movements proceed either from energies or from bodies. We have seen, also, that the soul, being incorporeal, proceeds not from any matter, but from an essence incorporeal itself. Everything that is born is necessarily produced by some other thing. Two movements necessarily accompany everything, the generation of which involves decay. That of the soul which moves it, and that of the body which augments, diminishes, and decomposes it, in decomposing itself. It is thus that I define the movement of perishable bodies. But the soul is perpetually in motion, without cessation she moves and produces movement. Thus every soul is immortal and always in motion, moved by her own activity. There are three species in souls: divine, human, and irrational. The divine soul abides in a divine form, it is therein that she has her energy, therein she moves and acts. When this soul separates herself from mortal creatures, she forsakes her irrational parts and enters into the divine form. And, as she is always in motion, she is borne along in the universal movement. The human soul has also something divine, but she is bound to irrational elements, desire and passion. These elements are undying, because they are energies. But they are energies of mortal bodies, therefore they are removed from the divine part of the soul, which inhabits the divine form. When this divine part enters into a mortal body and meets therein these irrational elements, she becomes, by means of their presence, a human soul. The soul of animals is composed of passion and desire, therefore the animals are called brutes, because their soul is deprived of reason. The fourth species in soul, that possessed by inanimate creatures, is placed outside the bodies actuated. This soul moves in the divine form, and impels it passively. Chapter 6. The soul is, then, an eternal and intelligent essence, having for thought her own reason. She enters into association with the concept of harmony. Separated from the physical body, she endures in herself, she is independent in the ideal world. She controls her reason, and confers on the entity emerging into life a movement analogous to her own thought, that is being. For the property of the soul is to assimilate other things to her own character. There are two kinds of vital movement, the one conformable to the essence of the soul, the other to the nature of the body. The first is general, the second particular, the first is independent, the second is subject to necessity. For everything moved is subject to the necessary law of the mover. But the motor movement is united by affinity to the intelligent principle. It behoves the soul to be incorporeal, and to be essentially different from the physical body, for if she had a body she would have neither reason nor thought. All bodies are unintelligent, but in receiving the spirit they become animated and breathe. The breath belongs to the body, but reason contemplates the beauty of the essential. The sensible spirit discerns appearances. It is distributed into organic sensations, mental perception is a part of it, as also is the acoustic, olfactive, gustative, and tactile sense. This spirit, attracted by thought, discerns sensations, otherwise it creates only phantoms, for it belongs to the body, and receives all things. The reason of the essential is the judgment. To the reason belongs the cognizance of lofty things, but to the sensible spirit, opinion. This last receives its energy from the external world, but the former from within itself. Various Hermetic Fragments. Chapter 1. There are, then, essential spirit, reason, intelligence, perception. Opinion and sensation tend towards perception, reason towards the essential spirit, thought advances independently. Thought is associated with perception. Conjoined, all these become a single form, which is that of the soul. Opinion and sensation tend also towards perfection, but they do not continue in the same condition, they exhibit excess, failure, or variation. Separated from perception, they deteriorate, approximating to and following it, they participate in the intellectual reason through the sciences. We have the power of choice, it depends on us to choose either the best or the worst by our will. The choice of evil approximates us to the corporeal nature, and subjects us to destiny. The intellectual spirit which is in us, being free, the intellectual reason is free also, always identical with itself, and independent of destiny. Therefore, in following this higher and intelligent reason, ordained by the Supreme God, the spirit is superior to the order of nature over creatures. But the soul which attaches herself to these creatures participates in their destiny, though foreign to their nature. Chapter 2. There is, then, a state of being superior to all beings, and to all that actually is. Being is that by which universal essentiality is common to all intelligible entities actually existing. Nature is sensible essentiality, including in itself all sensible objects. Midway are the intellectual and sensible gods. The concepts of intelligence are related to the intellectual gods, the concepts of opinion to the sensible gods, which are reflections of the intelligences. As, for instance, the sun is the image of the creative and celestial God. For as God has created the universe, so the sun creates animals, produces plants, and governs fluid things. Chapter 3. Wherefore the incorporeal vision comes forth from the body to contemplate beauty, lifting itself up and adoring, not the form, nor the body, nor the appearance, but that which, behind all, is calm, tranquil, substantial, immutable, that which is all, alone and one, that which is by itself and in itself, similar to itself, and without variation. Chapter 4. If thou understandest this one and only good, thou wilt find nothing impossible, for all virtue is therein. Think not that this good is in anyone, nor that it is outside of anyone. It is without limit, being the limit of all. Nothing contains it, it contains all in itself. For what distinction is there between the corporeal and the incorporeal, the create and the uncreate, that which is subject to necessity and that which is free? Between terrestrial things and things celestial, corruptible things and things eternal? Is it not that these subsist freely, and that those are subject to the bondage of necessity? That which is below is imperfect and perishable. Chapter 5. Beneath nature and the ideal world is placed the pyramid. Its cornerstone, placed on its summit, is the creative word of the universal Lord, which, after him, is the first power, uncreate, infinite, begotten of him and antecedent to all his creations. He is the offspring of the most perfect, the fruitful and true Son. The nature of this intelligent word is a generating and productive nature. Call it as thou wilt, generation, or nature, or character. But think this only, that he is perfect in the perfect, and issued from the perfect, that all his works are perfectly good, and that he is the source of creation and of life. Since such is his nature, he is well named. But for the providence of the Lord of the universe who causes me to reveal these words, you would not have so great a desire to seek out such matters. Now, therefore, hear the end of this discourse. This Spirit of whom I have so often spoken is necessary to all, for he maintains all, he gives life to all, he nourishes all. He outflows from the holy source, and without ceasing comes to the aid of spirits and to all living creatures. Chapter 6. Thus the ideal light was before the ideal light, and the luminous intelligence of intelligence was always, and its unity was nothing else than the Spirit enveloping the universe. Out of whom is neither God, nor angels, nor any other essentials, for he is the Lord of all things and the power and the light, and all depends on him and is in him. His perfect word, generative and creative, descending into generative nature and into generating water, rendered the water fruitful. Having thus spoken, he rose and said, I adjure thee, heaven, holy work of the great God, I adjure thee, voice of the Father, uttered in the beginning when the universal world was framed. I adjure thee by the word, only Son of the Father who upholds all things, be favorable, be favorable. Chapter 7. 7 planets revolve in the ways of Olympos, and by them eternity is measured. The moon which illumines the night, the gloomy Kronos, the gentle sun, the Paphian goddess, protectress of marriage, the valiant Ares, the fruitful Hermes. And Zeus the principle of birth and the fount of nature. These, likewise, have received the human race in heritage, and there are, within us, the moon, Zeus, Ares, Aphrodite, Kronos, Phoebus, Hermes. Moreover, we draw from the ethereal fluid our tears, our laughter, our wrath, our speech, our generation, our sleep, our desire. Tears are of Kronos, generation of Zeus, speech of Hermes, valor of Ares, sleep of Artemis, desire of Cytherea known as Aphrodite, laughter of Apollo. For he it is who pours joy upon human thought and on the infinite world. Chapter 8. Hermes affirms that those who know God are preserved from assaults of the evil one, and are not even subject to destiny. The knowledge of God is religion. The end.